Story 1.
Discovered my wife cheated amp, hid the truth about my brother's child for years, changed everything. I got married when I was 23 and she was 21. We met in college during my junior year and our connection quickly grew. It was clear from the start that we were meant to be together, so we decided to get married after she graduated. I found a job near my hometown, where I grew up. My parents ran a farm there, employing 8 full-time workers and 45 seasonal laborers. Both my brother and I were involved in the farm's operations while growing up. Let's call my brother Bill for reference. Bill, who was 3 years younger than me, opted not to pursue higher education and worked as a laborer on the farm for years. Despite our father's attempts to give him managerial roles, he preferred being a farm laborer, doing his job diligently and receiving his wages. That's what he dedicated his life to until he tragically passed away from cancer earlier this year. The farm covers nearly 700 acres and includes 3 houses. My parents live in the main house, tucked away from the main road, which also serves as the farm office. My brother lived in a charming carriage house at the junction of the driveway and the main road. Meanwhile, my wife, children, and I live in a farmhouse about 3/4 of a mile from my parents and brother. To expand the farm and protect the farmhouse, my parents acquired the neighboring property through the Family Farm Corporation. As a result, all 3 homes are now owned by the corporation, and my brother and I lived there rent-free, which was quite advantageous. While my parents hold officer positions in the company, they structured it so that my brother and I would inherit the farm when they pass away. According to the arrangement, Bill is entitled to 45%, while I receive 55% of the inheritance. Due to my active role in managing the farm alongside my regular job, I was given controlling interest, even though I didn't receive extra pay for this work. My family and I enjoyed the perk of living on the property without paying rent, with the understanding that I would eventually become the majority owner. This arrangement created a wonderful family atmosphere, and we all cherished our time living there. In terms of my children, my oldest is a 21-year-old girl, followed by a 20-year-old boy. We also have a 17-year-old boy, and our youngest is a 15-year-old girl. Life was truly wonderful for all of us. My marriage with Connie was filled with happiness and love. Our children were remarkable, my job was thriving, and the family farm was flourishing. With this background in mind, you can truly grasp the overall picture. Now let me delve into the matter that prompted me to share this post. Approximately 3 years ago, my brother received the devastating news of being diagnosed with cancer. Unfortunately, he had always struggled with prioritizing his own well-being and only sought medical intervention when his symptoms became unbearable. Regrettably, by the time his cancer was detected, it had already spread to various parts of his body. Enduring a tough journey, he underwent grueling chemotherapy and radiation treatments that significantly impacted his overall health. Despite the toll it took on him, he bravely continued with his work commitments. Earlier this year, we experienced the profound loss of Bill, and it was an incredibly emotional period for our entire family, particularly for me. Bill held me in high regard as his role model, and I was there to help him through the challenges he faced in life. One major obstacle he tackled with my support was his battle against alcoholism, which he successfully overcame 4 years before his passing. Additionally, he grappled with significant tax issues that needed attention and resolution. I played a crucial part in helping him navigate these challenges, since he often struggled with even the simplest tasks life threw at him. As a result, our bond grew exceptionally strong, and we became very close. My wife and children also had a deep affection for him, even though they affectionately called him Crazy Uncle Bill. It's important to note that Bill wasn't unintelligent or lazy. Instead, he lacked motivation and ambition to improve his life and circumstances. Over the years, Bill had several relationships with different girlfriends, but none of them lasted. Many of these connections formed with women he met at bars, often resulting in short-lived romances. However, there was one instance when he dated a genuinely kind-hearted woman, and I had genuine hopes for their future together. Unfortunately, his drinking habits eventually led her to leave him. My parents wholeheartedly accepted Bill, loving him unconditionally just as they loved me. As per his will, Bill appointed me as the executor of his estate, giving me the responsibility of managing the distribution of his assets. His estate included various possessions, like a life insurance policy, a modest checking account, and personal items such as his motorcycle and truck. After his funeral, about 2 weeks later, I found myself at his home handling financial matters and going through the extensive paperwork he had on his kitchen table. While organizing the paperwork, I came across a statement from a bank located outside our town. To my surprise, the account held an impressive balance of over $70,000. However, what truly startled me were the names listed on the statement. The account was in Bill's name, but my youngest son, whom I'll call Joe, was named as the beneficiary with the acronym POD, which stands for Payable on Death. As I went through the details, I felt confused. I couldn't help but wonder why my brother had chosen to set up the account this way. What was the reason behind designating Joe as the sole beneficiary when he didn't have a closer bond with Joe compared to my other children? In fact, if anything, Bill had a stronger connection with my other kids rather than Joe. My mind raced, trying to find answers, but I realized I couldn't come up with a logical explanation. After making this astonishing discovery, my initial thought was to inform my wife and parents, but I decided to hold off on sharing the news for now. The next day, I went to the bank, taking advantage of my role as the executor to gather more information. I learned that Bill had opened the money market account just a month after Joe was born and consistently made contributions to it every 2 weeks. As I pieced together these facts, I couldn't help but focus on the undeniable connection between Bill and Joe, which troubled and concerned me deeply. Thoughts about the possibility of an affair between Bill and Connie, and whether Joe might be Bill's son, consumed my mind relentlessly. These thoughts left me in a state of anxiety and obsession. That night, consumed by these thoughts, I returned to Bill's house. I was determined to find any clues that could provide answers. Hours passed as I meticulously searched through every file and document in the house. Finally, I came across something that would change my life forever. Flipping it over, my world shattered as I found 2 old photos of my wife. In one, she was topless, and in the other, she stood holding a beer, completely naked. Shockingly, both pictures were taken in Bill's bedroom. Overwhelmed by a mix of devastation, anger, and confusion, I remained at Bill's house for several more hours that night, shifting between tearful despair and seething anger. Connie eventually called, asking about my whereabouts, which prompted me to return home. At that point, I decided not to directly address her, as I needed time to think about my next steps. I even briefly considered ignoring what I had found, but that idea was quickly dismissed. How could I even think of such a thing? Those photos were from years ago, and my brother was no longer alive. I couldn't keep this to myself, so I made the choice to tell my parents about what I had discovered, and I followed through on that decision. The following day, I took some time off in the afternoon and met with them at the farm office. I informed them about the bank account and showed them the pictures of my wife. It was crucial to lay out all the evidence. My parents were completely bewildered when they saw the proof, and they couldn't believe their eyes. They were deeply disturbed and shocked by the revelation, seemingly even more than I was. They asked about my plans. I told them I intended to confront Connie and, if the allegations were true, begin divorce proceedings. While they understood my choice, my mother advised me to give Connie a chance to explain herself and to carefully think through my actions before proceeding. After our dinner, I went with Connie to Bill's house, saying I needed her help with cleaning and organizing. Once inside, I guided her to a seat and gently told her we needed to discuss something important. I handed her a packet containing the bank statement and pictures of her. I gave her the bank statement first. She looked at it and was surprised by the significant amount of money Bill had saved. I asked her if she noticed anything unusual on the statement, but she didn't, only mentioning the impressive sum. I then asked her to read the statement aloud from the top. She read the bank's name and address, followed by Bill's name. As she continued, her voice trailed off as she read the words "payable on death to Joe, our last name." She looked at me with a shocked expression, realizing she had been caught. She wondered aloud why Bill did this. I asked if there was something she needed to confess. She initially shook her head vigorously, but I pressed her, asking again if she was absolutely sure. Reluctantly, she confirmed her previous statement. With a sigh, I took out the photographs and placed them in her trembling hands. Her body froze instantly, and tears started streaming down her face uncontrollably. She pleaded to explain herself, her voice choked with emotion. I told her to tell me her side of the story. She was so nervous that she rushed to the bathroom, where I heard her vomiting. 15 minutes later, she came out and confessed to her involvement with Bill 18 years ago. She admitted that having the affair was a foolish and selfish choice, emphasizing that it lasted only a few weeks. Connie claimed she realized the mistake quickly and ended it. She assured me that since then, she had kept her distance from Bill and only interacted with him when other family members were present. I asked if Joe was Bill's biological son. She confidently said, "No, he is undoubtedly yours." I asked how she could be so sure. She insisted Joe was mine, even if not biologically, because I had raised him. Her statement seemed contradictory, leaving me a bit confused. I then made it clear that our conversation was about her relationship with Bill, not my relationship with Joe. Despite her tearful pleas for forgiveness, I remained firm, offering no empathy or comfort. Instead, I got up from my seat and decided to leave. I told her not to return home until she had composed herself and looked presentable. I didn't want our children to see her in such distress, so I went home while she arrived about an hour later. Despite her persistent requests for a conversation, I firmly told her there would be an appropriate time for that in the future. We shared the same bed that night, however. When she tried to cuddle with me, I rejected her advances. Instead, I turned away and made it clear that I didn't want to share the bed with her. In fact, I wouldn't have slept in the same room as her. She silently cried throughout the night, struggling to sleep. The next day, I used my paid time off and went to the main house to meet with my parents. I told them about Connie's confession, and once again, they were shocked by the revelation. I confirmed that I intended to seek a divorce from Connie. When my mother asked if divorce was really what I wanted, I reluctantly admitted that it wasn't my preference, but after what I had learned, I couldn't trust her anymore and had no desire for any physical intimacy with her. After the meeting with my parents, I returned home and confronted Connie. I told her I wanted a divorce. Connie broke down, completely overwhelmed with emotions. She begged and said the affair had happened a long time ago. She insisted she was sure that Joe was my son. She pleaded with me, emphasizing her certainty once again. I firmly stated that Joe was not the main issue in our discussion. My love for him remained unchanged, regardless of his biological father. I made it clear that this betrayal was solely between her and me. The timing didn't matter, whether it had happened 18 years ago or even centuries ago. The severity of her betrayal remained the same. Later that day, I set up a meeting with our usual farm-related attorney. Recognizing the seriousness of the situation, he suggested a divorce attorney who happened to be a close acquaintance. Without wasting time, I scheduled an appointment with the divorce attorney for that same afternoon, initiating the legal process. The attorney reassured me that the farm and the 3 houses, all integral parts of the corporation, wouldn't be at risk during the settlement, providing some comfort amid the chaos. Despite the infidelity, the attorney explained that our remaining assets would still be split evenly. This was possible because my parents had wisely organized the farm as a corporation, anticipating such unfortunate circumstances. They had appointed themselves as the sole officers, a foresight that proved invaluable in minimizing potential fallout from a situation like this. If any of my children were to go through a divorce while having ownership in the farm, their ex-spouse wouldn't have any claim to the farm. The attorney clarified that the farm's corporate structure doesn't grant ownership rights to my wife. He also clarified that, due to my wife's lack of employment outside the home, I might be required to provide spousal support for at least 5 years, possibly longer. Even in cases of infidelity, spousal support remains mandatory, which is quite surprising. The laws seem to favor women heavily, as he pointed out. While we could consider challenging this in court, his assessment was based on his past representation of clients in similar situations. According to him, that was the expected outcome. I had anticipated and prepared for it. Money wasn't my primary concern. I simply wanted to end the marriage. After returning home, I broke the news to Connie, and she completely lost control. She cried and begged for a second chance, but I repeatedly refused. Then I let her know that I would be talking to the children over the weekend. I mentioned that I'd speak with Joe one-on-one first, and then gather all the kids together, including Joe, to inform them. Connie asked if she could be present during these discussions, and I firmly declined. However, I did tell her that she could meet with them afterward if she wanted. On Saturday morning, I approached Joe and let him know there was something important we needed to talk about. We walked to the creek on our farm, where there was a pavilion and picnic benches. In that peaceful setting, I shared the news with him. As expected, he was devastated and filled with worry. In his distress, he asked me if I would still love him if he wasn't my biological son. I reassured him, letting him know that my love for him would remain strong, no matter his biological ties. I firmly told him not to dwell on it, emphasizing that it wouldn't change my relationship with him or with any of his siblings. I made it clear that this was an issue between his mother and me, and he and his siblings were not at fault. I went on to explain that I would be divorcing his mother, emphasizing that it was solely because of her affair with Uncle Bill and had nothing to do with him or his actions. We spent a couple of hours sitting and talking. I let him know that the next step would be to gather his siblings and have a conversation with them. Sensing his need for some time to prepare, he requested it, and I agreed without hesitation. Back at the house, we kept up appearances of normalcy, though my wife's behavior had noticeably changed. The children didn't seem to notice, as we spent most of the afternoon relaxing by the pool. We played games like cornhole and toss the frisbee, creating the illusion of a typical summer weekend for our family. However, beneath the surface, a dark secret hung over us, waiting to be revealed. After dinner, Joe approached me and expressed his readiness to talk to his siblings. Unfortunately, they all had plans with their friends that evening, so we decided to postpone the discussion until the following morning. The next day, we all woke up early, had breakfast together, and attended Sunday services as a united family, as was our usual routine. When we returned home from church, I gathered the kids and let them know I needed to talk to them privately on the back patio. My daughter asked if Mom would be there, and I told her that she wouldn't be with us at that moment but would meet with them later. This immediately made the kids uneasy. With a heavy heart, I shared the news with them, and it was tough to witness their reactions. As expected, they first seemed disbelieving, then became angry, and eventually sadness settled in. I then explained my intention to divorce their mother, and tears welled up in their eyes. We had a lengthy conversation, going into detail about the situation, and eventually they came to understand and accept my decision. My daughter, overwhelmed by emotions, expressed her strong dislike for her mother and her desire to cut ties with her. I reminded each of them that they are young adults and have the freedom to handle the situation in their own way. However, I advised them to consider their mother's perspective and not rush into decisions based solely on this one incident. Instead, I encouraged them to think carefully and remember all the positive moments they've had with her, because she's still their loving mother. After they learned about the situation, they all acknowledged that their relationship with their mother had been good, but they were understandably upset, and none of them immediately wanted to meet with her to seek clarity. I proposed doing DNA tests for each of them. I made it clear that their mother had admitted to a brief involvement with Uncle Bill, but I intended to have the tests for my own peace of mind and to uncover the truth and address any doubts. I assured them that no matter the outcome of the DNA tests, whether they were biologically mine or not, my love for them would remain unchanged because they were legally my children. Later that evening, their mother joined them in the dining room for a highly emotional conversation. Although I wasn't in the room, I overheard fragments of their discussion. Ultimately, the children expressed their love for their mother. However, their perception of her had been forever altered, and it seemed unlikely that they would ever fully forgive her for what she had done to me and our family. This news was devastating for my wife, even though it was the consequence she deserved. After that night, she slept in the guest room until our divorce was finalized, a process that took almost 8 long months. Throughout this time, she pleaded with me daily to reconsider and attend marriage counseling, but I remained firm in my decision. 3 months after our divorce, we received an unexpected offer from a developer interested in buying the house where my family and I lived, as well as the adjacent 80 acres of land. The monetary value offered was substantial, leading my parents and me to make a practical business decision and accept the offer. Consequently, my wife, our 2 youngest children, and I relocated 60 days later. It was during this time that my wife found a 3-bedroom apartment in town to move into. The harsh reality hit her deeply during this period, causing her to fall into a severe depression that required multiple medications for treatment. As a result, I temporarily moved back into my parents' home. During this time, I decided to pursue my long-held dream of constructing my own home on the farmland. The opportunity arose, allowing me to bring my vision to life. Collaborating with an architect, we designed a beautiful mid-sized log cabin with 3 bedrooms. After its completion, I now live in this dream house with my 2 youngest children. They also spend a few nights each week with their mother. While my ex-wife continues to grapple with her depression, there are some signs of improvement. She expresses a desire to reconcile, but I have no interest in rekindling our relationship. Nevertheless, I treat her with respect and empathy. It's interesting how discovering the affair completely extinguished any feelings I had for her, leaving me with a sense of obligation rather than affection. Our conversations now mainly revolve around our children, as I try to minimize unnecessary interaction. Despite the betrayal, she doesn't have anyone else here besides our family, so completely cutting her off is not an option. I still feel a sense of responsibility toward her. Fortunately, the DNA test results confirmed that all of my children are biologically mine. The relief is immense, considering the turmoil and sleepless nights it caused. However, this revelation does not alter my feelings toward Connie. The profound betrayal she inflicted upon me remains unforgivable, and I will never be able to forget or fully forgive her. I still don't understand why Bill set up that account with Joe as the beneficiary. My ex-wife insists that they never discussed paternity, and I'm inclined to believe her on this matter. However, it's strange that Bill would make such a decision without any clear reason. Maybe he assumed something, or perhaps he wanted Joe to be his child. Despite this ongoing uncertainty, I'm content with my current situation and the relationship I have with my children. Restoring trust with my ex-wife may never happen, but I still care about her and genuinely want her to find happiness in life. I'm not exactly sure why I felt the need to share this, but expressing it in words has given me a sense of relief, and it has made me appreciate even more how things have unfolded. At the age of 51, I hold the position of assistant manager at a large warehouse complex, while my 54-year-old wife works as a real estate agent in Tampa, Florida. She takes care of her 2 college-age children, and I don't have any children of my own. A decade ago, fate brought my wife and me together at a business convention, and we've been together ever since. We share interests in traveling, going to the beach, and spending time with family. Giving back to our local community, volunteering at soup kitchens, and organizing food drives for those in need are significant to us. Making a positive impact on others' lives and contributing to society has been incredibly rewarding. My wife is socially active, frequently attending events and spending time with her girlfriends. Our bed life has been satisfying, but I occasionally felt uncomfortable with her tendency to excessively flirt with men in positions of authority. I distinctly remember an incident at a real estate event when she engaged in what I perceived as excessive flirting with a real estate developer. I voiced my concerns right after lunch. She explained that most of her interactions were work-related, and although she eventually apologized, I still had doubts about her sincerity. Over time, her outings with friends became more frequent, resulting in extended absences from home, lasting only a few days each time but occurring more often. Her group included my wife and 3 other women with varying marital statuses, as she told me. I've always been someone who trusts completely until proven otherwise, and this extended to my trust in my wife. One evening after work, my wife called and mentioned bringing dinner home. While unknowingly having me on speakerphone, background noise indicated the presence of 2 other women in the car with her. During the conversation, one of the women asked if I was joining them for a trip to Miami. This took me by surprise, and I asked my wife who she was talking to. She explained the woman was addressing me. Despite my confusion, I replied, "No, I'll likely be occupied with work." Later, when my wife returned home, we had a heated argument about her uncommunicated plans to travel to Miami. She claimed it was a last-minute decision and that she was going to inform me, but her friend revealed it prematurely. My wife informed me that they visited a bar and one of her friends had too much to drink. Her work as a real estate agent involved interactions with various people, exploring different neighborhoods, active participation in community activities, and offering help to others. However, as previously mentioned, she had a penchant for flirting. Her job as a real estate agent earned her an annual income of over $120,000, while my own earnings were approximately $40,000, significantly less than hers. It's important to note that it took her several years to reach her current income level. She invested heavily in preparing for her trip to Miami, spending a substantial sum on clothing despite already having an extensive wardrobe. A few days later, she left for Miami, which was only a 4.5-hour drive from Tampa, planning to stay for 4 days. However, on the second day of her absence, when I returned home from work around 7 p.m., something unexpected occurred. There was a distinct knock on the door, and a man in a formal suit stood there holding a large manila envelope. He addressed me by name, handed me the envelope, and said, "This is for you." Afterward, he left. Upon opening the envelope, I found a note with a contact phone number and the words, "Contact me if you would like to discuss the photos." As I gazed at the first photo, it showed my wife seated on a man's lap, engaged in a passionate kiss with his hands on her back. They appeared to be in some sort of nightclub. The second photo depicted a scene by a pool where my wife and a man were sharing a passionate kiss. At this point, I decided to call the phone number provided on the note. During our conversation, I learned that the man was a private investigator who had been hired by another husband suspicious of his wife's infidelity. His job involved gathering information about the social circle of the client's wife. Upon closer examination of the pictures, I came across 3 more photos that clearly showed bed moments between my wife and the same man. In that moment, a mix of anger, frustration, and heartache overwhelmed me, causing tears to well up. I called my dad and recounted the recent events to him. He advised me to regain my composure and strongly recommended that I refrain from revealing anything to her. I assured my father that I would remain calm and not utter a word. With just 1 day left before my wife's return from her trip, I consulted with an attorney online. During our discussion, I openly shared the situation and explained that I had evidence of my wife's infidelity. Unfortunately, I was told that in Florida, it doesn't matter because it's a no-fault state. The attorney then asked how long we had been married, to which I replied that it had been over a decade. My plan was to hire a lawyer the next day while trying to maintain a sense of normalcy at home. However, when my wife returned from her trip, it unintentionally disrupted my well-thought-out plan, as she had 2 days off. So I had to delay my plan for a while. On the 3rd day, she returned to work, and I left the house after her. While she was away, I reached out to my father and Kenny for financial assistance to cover my attorney fees, and they agreed to help. I hired a lawyer and instructed them to start divorce proceedings, citing irreconcilable differences as the reason. Afterward, I packed my belongings, and with my father's assistance, I moved most of my stuff to his apartment using his truck. However, I hadn't yet moved in with him. I intended to stay until my wife was officially served with the divorce papers. 2 weeks passed, and surprisingly, she hadn't been informed. Another week went by, and she was finally served with the divorce papers while at work. Following this, my phone began receiving messages from her, including questions like, "What's going on?" I was at home that day when my ex-spouse, soon-to-be, called me. I asked my father to be present in our house since I didn't trust her, and he arrived just 5 minutes before her. As soon as she walked in, she immediately inquired why I had filed for divorce and what had prompted my decision. I pulled out the pictures from my bag and showed them to her, explaining that these were the reasons behind my divorce filing. She was shocked, covered her mouth, tears welled up, and she attempted to apologize. At that point, I no longer wanted to see her and told her that we would meet in court. As expected, she bombarded my phone with calls and texts, suggesting options like marriage counseling. Before the divorce hearing, she hired an attorney who did everything possible to contest the process. My attorney mounted a strong defense, resulting in a favorable outcome for me. I received $60,000 in equity from the subsequent house sale, as well as $1,900 per month in spousal support for 3 years. We divided the furniture, but I chose to give it to her. About a month later, I learned that my ex-wife had cheated on me before, though I was unaware of it. One of her close friends had considered telling me about the affair, but felt it wasn't her place. Later, she expressed regret for not disclosing it and apologized. I responded that if I had known about the affair, I might not have been married to her for a decade. 8 months have passed since my divorce, and during this time, my ex-wife has sent me text messages almost every week, inquiring about my well-being. However, I've decided not to respond. I've maintained my phone number, choosing not to change it because it's my prerogative. Even when she mentioned that her children were curious about me in one of her messages, it didn't prompt me to respond. The pain from this situation lingers, but I'm fortunate to have supportive friends who avoid discussing that tumultuous period. I'm on a healing journey and have recently started therapy sessions. Despite the heartache, I'm confident that I'll be okay in the end.
Story 2.
My wife's affair shattered our marriage, a journey through betrayal, divorce, and starting over. My name is William Kennedy. My wife's name is Victoria. She doesn't like being called Vicky, so everyone who knows her calls her Victoria. To my wife's family and friends, I go by William. Strangely, my boss at work, who's a bit formal, always calls me William. We get along well, and I enjoy my job. I work as a lawyer for a company that does management consulting and accounting, focusing on corporate law. I work long hours, but I have some flexibility to set my own schedule when necessary and if the project allows it. I have deadlines, but I make sure to meet them so my boss doesn't have any issues. Victoria works for a publishing company and spends most of her time working from home editing other people's writing. She can usually set her own hours, which gives her time to take care of our 3 kids. We have 2 daughters, aged 8 and 6, and a 5-year-old son. We're a typical family with busy schedules, lots of activities with the kids, and trying to have some fun along the way. As a couple, we aim to go out together at least twice a month. We don't always manage it, but we make an effort. Until recently, I thought Victoria was happy with her life, with our life. Despite working 60 hours a week, I believed she was content. I thought we had a strong relationship. Our bed life was active, and I made sure to do little things to show my love for her and to appreciate her role as a wife and mother. But about a year ago, on one of our date nights, everything changed in our relationship and marriage. Victoria started a conversation that would change the direction of our lives. "Honey, do you ever feel like we're missing out on things?" I replied, "Gosh, I'm not sure." "What things are you thinking about, Victoria?" She went on, "Lately, it feels like we're stuck in a routine. I'm not sure if you see it too." "Dear, what does that routine look like to you?" I asked. She explained, "It seems like all we do is work and take care of the kids. We hardly have any time for ourselves." I thought about what she said and guessed where she might be heading. "Would you like to go on a vacation? Just the 2 of us? We could ask your parents to watch the kids for a week, go to the Caribbean for some sun and beach. We could both use some relaxation." Victoria surprised me. "That sounds nice, honey, but I had something else in mind to shake things up in our lives a bit." Now curious, I asked, "What exactly are you thinking, dear?" Victoria hesitated, then began, "You know how we've talked about pretending to pick up others and have closeness with them? What if we actually tried it?" My heart raced. "What are you suggesting?" she urged. "Just hear me out for a minute. What if we explored the idea of having an open marriage? We would take it slow and see if it works for us before making any big decisions." Caught off guard, I confessed. "This is surprising. I don't know what to say." Victoria persisted. "Think about it. What if we found other people who were compatible with us to have closeness with occasionally, without any romantic commitments? Imagine the passion and excitement we could bring back into our marriage and to each other." I realized I was holding my breath, then said, What exactly are you proposing, Victoria? You want to be intimate with another man? She smiled and explained, "It wouldn't be cheating, dear. It'd be casual, with no romance, no relationship like ours. Just occasionally, maybe a few times a month. That's it. What do you think?" Stunned, I asked again, "Let me make sure I understand. You want to have sex with other men a couple of times a month?" "Well, it doesn't have to be exactly twice a month. It could be more or less, depending on what we decide." I couldn't have been more shocked if she had hit me with a hammer. I pondered for a moment. "We both get to be involved in this?" "Yes, of course. We both get to share in the excitement. Just imagine the new things we could discover about pleasuring each other that we haven't explored yet." "Think about the rekindled passion we could experience," Victoria explained. I let out a breath. "But how would we even start? Do you already have someone in mind if I agree? Because right now, I'm not on board." Victoria took a moment to consider it. "We could enjoy intimacy without any obligations. It would be at a time that doesn't disrupt our schedules or family life, and we'd still be there for each other, just like before. Our family wouldn't be impacted, and our personal lives might even improve. Together, we'd experience a boost in passion and connection." Deep down, I sensed something was off. Victoria always plans everything carefully, and this situation was no exception. I suspected she had spent a lot of time imagining this scenario, and might even have someone specific in mind to be intimate with if I agreed. "So, just to clarify once more, you're saying we can both seek other partners outside of our marriage? You won't feel jealous, upset, or hurt if I'm with another woman, and you expect me to be okay if you're with another man. Is that what you're proposing?" I questioned. "Well, yeah, that's pretty much it. What do you think?" "Should we give it a shot?" she asked eagerly. I needed to get to the heart of the matter if I wanted to uncover the truth. "Who is this guy you want to be intimate with? If I agree to this wild idea, when do you want to start, and who's the person you have in mind?" I inquired. Her eagerness to have me on board with her plan gave away a clue. "Well, there's this guy, Ian, at the publishing company who's been asking me to lunch whenever I'm at the office. He's younger than us, and from what others say, he's already in a relationship. The secret's out. She's interested in some young guy named Ian." "So, Ian, huh? Well, what do you think, honey? Are you up for trying something new to spice up our marriage?" she asked. "I still don't see how you being with another man will improve our marriage. If you want better intimacy, why not explore ways we can enhance it together, with each other, not someone else? How does adding another man to the mix improve our connection?" "I just want to understand. This is about us," I explained. "Imagine the fresh perspectives we could gain from each other, like hiring a consultant for new ideas. Why not consider seeing a therapist together? You having an affair with some guy doesn't seem like it would benefit our relationship at all," I added. Victoria struggled to let go of the idea of seeing a sex therapist. "Honey, trust me, my suggestion is for our benefit. I'd never do anything to harm our marriage," she insisted. I was growing frustrated with her persistence. "Victoria, I don't control you. I can only share my thoughts on how this might affect us and our family. But think of it as an adventure for both of us. Imagine how much we could learn and grow together," she urged. "Victoria, this isn't like signing up for a class. You're suggesting being intimate with another man." "Good grief," I muttered, rising from the table and heading to the men's room to splash cold water on my face. As I looked at myself in the mirror, I sensed she had ulterior motives, likely determined to do as she pleased regardless of my objections. I dried off and returned to the table, not at all convinced that Victoria's plan would improve our marriage. I believed it would add more complications to our lives. We had plenty to deal with already without introducing sexual relationships with others, even if we agreed to it beforehand. What bothered me most was that I married Victoria expecting us to be exclusive to each other. That's what marriage means to me. There's an expectation of loyalty and monogamy, or at least that's what I thought. We even promised it in our wedding vows to be faithful to each other. It was clear my wife wasn't finding sexual fulfillment with me, and that saddened me. The following 2 weeks were tense between us. She kept smiling at me, expecting me to agree with her plan. She even intensified our usual sex routine of twice a week. For a whole week, she wanted sex every night. After putting the kids to bed, she'd take my hand and lead me to the bedroom. We showered together, exploring each other with soapy hands. Victoria was attractive and in shape, clearly desiring more intimacy than twice a week. Had I been neglecting her needs in bed? She was more eager than I'd seen her in years, wanting to try various positions we hadn't used since before having kids. Maybe we had fallen into a rut, but was having sex with others the solution? A week later, with no mention of an open marriage, I thought she had forgotten the idea. Maybe more sex was what she truly wanted. I was wrong. Victoria continued initiating intimacy every night. After a particularly passionate session where she engaged me twice, she brought it up again. "Honey, have you considered trying an open marriage like I suggested?" "Dang, honestly, I was kind of hoping all the extra sex meant you changed your mind about the whole thing," I admitted. "Well, the closeness with you lately has been awesome, but it's been pretty much the same every time. We need to switch things up, make it more exciting. That's what I'm hoping we can learn from others," she explained. I felt disappointed that she still wanted an open marriage. "So you still want us to be open so you can be with other men?" I said, my tone showing I wasn't happy about it. "Don't be so down, Will. This is a chance for us to grow individually and bring new experiences to our marriage. The passion and excitement you want, you're not getting it with me right now, are you? This is an opportunity for both of us to explore new things to bring back to our relationship. I think it'll make us stronger as a couple." "Victoria, as I've said before, I don't control you. You make your own choices. If this is truly what you want, then I guess you'll go ahead with it, even if I disagree. Just be cautious about what you're seeking, because every decision has consequences." "Thank you, Will. You'll see, this will benefit both of us." With that conversation, it seemed settled. I left the room to grab a strong drink. I knew my marriage was over, and there was no point in trying to change her mind. Victoria had what she wanted, free rein to be with other men. There wasn't much I could do to stop her. This situation was all messed up, but it was time for her to face the consequences. 1 month later, Victoria wasted no time in meeting up with Ian from her workplace. They met twice a week despite our agreement not to stay overnight with lovers. After their 4th meeting, she began texting me late, claiming she had been drinking wine and shouldn't drive. How convenient. I advised her to take a cab. After putting the kids to bed one Saturday, we sat down to discuss what had been happening over the past month. "Victoria, we need to clarify some things about this open marriage arrangement. We shouldn't be doing things that the other person isn't comfortable with or hasn't agreed to." "Well, what specific things are you referring to?" "Well, to begin with, we agreed no overnight stays, but you've spent the night with Ian 4 times in the past 2 weeks. That's not what we discussed. I want you home at night. Honestly, I worry when you're not here. You don't tell me where you're going, and that needs to change. Are you just upset about having to handle the kids' morning routine alone?" "No, this isn't about the kids. This is about your actions and our agreement." "All right, no more overnight stays. What's next? Perhaps we should create a written agreement, acknowledging our responsibilities to each other, the kids, and as a family." "But Will, that seems unnecessary. We're adults, we can handle this." "Maybe so, but I believe communication is crucial for making this work. When you turn off your phone while with another man, it worries me. Your safety is important to me. Another concern is protection. Is your partner using protection?" "I'm on birth control, Will, if that's what you're worried about." "Victoria, I'm concerned about sexually transmitted diseases. Did he provide proof from a doctor that he's STD-free?" "I didn't ask, but I'm sure he's fine." "So he's not using protection? Does he end it inside you?" Victoria blushed at the question. "Yes, he does. If he had an STD and didn't tell you and then passed it to you, you could pass it to me if we ever have sex again." Victoria fell silent. In my mind, I decided I wouldn't have sex with her again, at least not now. "Victoria, when you decided against a monogamous marriage, it came with responsibilities. Do you plan to stop having sex with me?" It had to be said, even if it wasn't what Will would say. "I love you dearly. We have children, and we want to grow old together and take care of each other." I grew increasingly upset by her disregard for our well-being. I didn't know what else to say. "I want to have a conversation with Ian." Victoria was surprised by my request. "What? Why do you want to talk to him?" "I want to meet him and have a chat. I want to ensure that he's prioritizing your safety and interests." Honestly, I wanted to confirm if Victoria had been truthful with him about our agreement. I wasn't sure if she had made it clear to Ian that their relationship was purely physical, without any romantic expectations. Victoria was too secretive about her activities for my liking. I suspected he might be offering things she couldn't or wouldn't give, like love. Was she in love with him? It's rare for someone to love 2 people equally. As feelings develop for one person, affection for another typically diminishes. That's human nature. I felt I'd already lost my wife the day she considered an open marriage. I hadn't sought out my own partner. Frankly, I wasn't interested until now, but seeing this new side of my wife made me think, what's good for her should be good for me too. 6 months later. All right, it's been several months since we opened our marriage. Victoria now has a steady boyfriend. First it was Ian, now it's a guy named Henry. About 5 months ago I insisted on meeting him. Victoria opposed it, which only strengthened my resolve to have a conversation with him about the woman he's involved with. One day, I visited the publishing company office to find him. It was a day when I knew Victoria would be working from home. I arrived at the offices, and the receptionist directed me to Ian's cubicle. He was there. I have to admit, I was surprised by the young man I met. He appeared to be in his mid-20 seconds, about my height, with brown hair and a slender build. I introduced myself, and as he stood to shake my hand, he quickly realized I was Victoria's husband and withdrew his hand. I wondered what that was all about. "Hello, Ian. I'm Will Kennedy, Victoria Kennedy's husband. We need to talk. Let's find somewhere private to have a conversation. There are important matters to discuss." I gestured for him to follow me. I wasn't certain he would, but he did, albeit nervously. Perhaps he thought I was there to confront him. It seemed his perspective on his relationship with my wife differed greatly from mine. We settled in a nearby coffee shop and ordered some coffee and a croissant. I wanted him to feel at ease enough to speak openly with me. "So, Ian, could you tell me a bit about yourself?" Ian seemed jittery, but after several inquiries, I began to unravel the truth about his understanding of his relationship with Victoria and his expectations of her. Eventually, through persistent questioning, I gleaned some revealing insights into their true relationship. It appears Victoria began engaging in sexual activity with Ian roughly a month before we agreed to an open marriage. Ian consistently refrained from using protection, asserting he was free of diseases and willing to undergo testing. He relayed Victoria's concerns about our marriage's state, suggesting I lacked emotional support and that she contemplated separation or divorce. Additionally, she conveyed my supposed acceptance of her involvement with other men. Ian inquired if I harbored resentment towards him and if I intended retaliation. I assured him otherwise, visibly calming him. However, I firmly instructed him to use protection with Victoria going forward, with no room for negotiation. I warned of potential consequences if he disregarded this directive. "Does your girlfriend know that you're having sex with Victoria?" "What girlfriend?" "Victoria is my girlfriend. Victoria told me that you had a girlfriend and that having sex with her was in addition to your other relationship. My last girlfriend and I broke up months ago. Victoria is my only girlfriend now." This strongly indicated Victoria's lack of honesty with me. She had deceived me about her connection with Ian and her expectations for their future together. It became evident that her vision for the future diverged significantly from mine at that moment. A couple of nights later, Victoria was furious with me for meeting Ian. "Will, why did you go see Ian?" "He mentioned that you were angry and threatened him." I smirked inwardly. "Did he tell you that I insisted he use protection if he wants to have sex with you?" "Yes, he did. But using protection ruins the fun." "Why are you insisting on that? We're both STD-free, for God's sake." She was visibly upset now. I took the mature approach. "Honey, I'm just concerned about your safety." We agreed that you and he would use protection. You consented to that. Victoria muttered something and stormed off. We didn't speak for 2 days. When we finally talked, she was furious once more. "Are you satisfied now?" "Ian ended things with me. I won't see him again. That's what you really wanted, right, when you went to see him?" "What I wanted, my dear wife, was to ensure your safety. I didn't want you to risk getting a disease that could harm you or even be fatal. That's what mattered to me. I also wanted to prevent any disease from spreading to me, although it seems unnecessary since we haven't been intimate in so long that I can't even remember the last time. What happened to the idea that this open marriage would benefit us and strengthen our relationship? When will that happen, Victoria?" I was angry with her and she knew it. Well, I hope you're satisfied now," she muttered as she stormed off. A coldness settled over our marriage. It was a very silent month. We hardly spoke to each other, and then everything suddenly changed. Victoria announced that she was meeting a new man. She dressed up in a revealing blouse and skirt paired with 4-inch high heels. Her hair and makeup were flawless, and she wore a new perfume that I hadn't noticed before. Suddenly, she was exceptionally sweet. She called me dear for the first time in a while as she mentioned going out to meet someone she met online. Alarm bells went off in my mind. "All right, where are you going and who are you meeting?" I reminded her that she was expected home tonight, emphasizing it should be tonight, not at 4 a.m. Things quickly spiraled out of control after that. However, I did manage to learn his name, his occupation, and that he was divorced. She began by seeing Henry once a week, but after a few months, she was nearly living with him. She only stays at home a few nights a week, sometimes just one, typically when her lover is away for work. I believe he works as a sales representative for a pharmaceutical company, but Victoria is secretive about him. I grew tired of her behavior and moved her belongings to the spare bedroom. She was taken aback, but I explained it would be easier if I had overnight guests, especially since I'm the one caring for the kids all the time. Her belief that having a relationship with another man would ignite passion and intensity in our marriage didn't turn out as she hoped. Instead, it brought about a lot of drama. I found myself growing increasingly frustrated with Victoria. I probably should have divorced her long ago, but I didn't want our kids to experience a broken home. Plus, even if I did leave, the children would be left with a mother who wasn't there for them at night. It was a challenging period for me. I couldn't comprehend why she wanted to engage in such behavior, nor could I understand my own reasons for tolerating it. Her hope that having a relationship with another man would spark more passion in our marriage didn't pan out as expected. Instead, it brought a lot of drama into our lives. I found myself increasingly frustrated with Victoria. Perhaps I should have ended our marriage long ago, but I couldn't bear the thought of our kids growing up in a broken home. Even if I did leave, they'd be left with a mother who wasn't there for them at night. It was a tough time for me, trying to understand why she pursued such behavior and why I put up with it. Yes, you're suggesting that I'm not exempt from blame, and you're probably right. I was too lenient with her and her actions. I ended up taking on most of the parenting responsibilities while she was hardly ever home. It was noticeable to the kids, who missed having their mother around. They asked about her almost every day, wondering why she had to be away so much. Initially, I told them she was spending time with a friend and would return soon. However, seeing her only 1 or 2 nights a week made it hard for them to believe her declarations of love. My oldest, who was 9, even asked, "Dad, why does Mom spend so much time with her friend? Who is her friend?" It was difficult to explain. Victoria began neglecting important responsibilities she usually handled for the kids. One afternoon, the school called to inform me that the parent-teacher interviews, which Victoria typically attended, had occurred the day before without her presence. The vice principal expressed concern, as Victoria was usually reliable, and offered to reschedule if there were any issues. Attempts to reach Victoria by phone were unsuccessful as her phone was switched off, leading to voicemail. I apologized to the school and promised to arrange a new appointment. The following day, when I tried contacting Victoria, her phone went straight to voicemail. I left a distressed message, questioning her absence from the meeting and urging her to call me back. For 3 days, she didn't call and dismissed it as trivial. I wanted her to return home so we could talk. She agreed to come over that Friday afternoon. I took time off and prepared to give her an ultimatum. However, on Friday, she called to cancel, citing a potential work commitment. It seemed like she was stalling, likely due to pressure from her boyfriend. The next significant incident that drew a clear boundary was our daughter's birthday. Most parents celebrate their children's birthdays to show love and care. Kids expect presents, cake, ice cream, and friends. My children were no exception. But when your mother forgets your 10th birthday, it's hard to ignore. A few weeks earlier, I asked Victoria if she would plan our daughter's birthday party. She assured me she would handle it well. However, as time passed, there was no action from her end, so I took charge, sending out invitations, buying a gift for my daughter, booking a venue, and arranging food. I hoped Victoria would remember, but she didn't. My daughter was devastated that her mother wasn't there for her party. When other parents asked about Victoria, I made up a work-related excuse. My daughter felt deeply hurt by her mother's absence. I called Victoria, and when she answered, I handed the phone to my daughter. "Mom, it's me. Where are you?" Victoria hesitated for a moment. "What's up, honey?" "Mom, today's my birthday." "Why aren't you here? We had a party, but you didn't come." There was silence on the line. My daughter thought her mother had hung up and gave my phone back to me. "Victoria, are you still there?" I heard crying. "Victoria, what's wrong? You missed Emma's birthday, for goodness sake." The call ended abruptly. A neighbor approached me quietly, asking if everything was okay with Victoria. She hadn't seen her around lately and sensed that our relationship was strained. That evening, I reached a breaking point. Victoria's disinterest in both me and our children led me to the decision to proceed with a divorce. In essence, we were already living separate lives. It was time to bring the situation to a close. The following day, I dialed Victoria's number, expecting her voicemail to pick up immediately. Leaving a brief yet urgent message, I requested her to call me back promptly. Alternatively, I urged her to come over to the house for a conversation. Surprisingly, using the word urgent seemed to catch her attention as she showed up at our house after dinner that same night. "Will, what's the matter? Why did you say it's urgent and important? Are the kids all right?" "Hello, Victoria? I'm glad you came. Thank you. We really need to have a serious talk. Please take a seat." She glanced at her watch as I spoke. "Don't worry, this won't take too long. So, what's on your mind? Well, since you've been away, the kids keep asking when you're coming back home. Are you planning to return, Victoria? Because it seems like you've already left us. Of course I'll come back, Will. I've mentioned before that I need this time to rediscover the passion and closeness we've lost. Once I've fulfilled that need, I'll be back home. I'll be a better wife and we'll be a family again. Sure, just so you're aware, Emma was heartbroken the other night when you didn't show up for her birthday party. And our other two kids have been wondering if you'll be there for their birthdays too. Victoria's eyes widened, revealing her shock. How could you forget your own children's birthdays? Now, here's the hard truth for both you and your lover, Victoria. I've made up my mind. I want a divorce.
What? Why are you asking for a divorce, Will? I'll be back home soon.
Victoria, there's no marriage left here. You're not fulfilling your role as a wife, and since you've already left the house, I can't fulfill mine either. To be honest, you shouldn't have left in the first place. I've stayed quiet for the sake of our kids, but this situation has gone too far. You moved out and settled things months ago, barely remembering that you have children and obligations to them, let alone to me. My lawyer says the court will view this as abandonment of our marriage and our kids.
But Will, I love you and the kids.
Can't you see that? No, Victoria, I don't see any love. If you truly loved your husband, you wouldn't be having an affair. If you cared about us, why did you leave? Why did you move in with your boyfriend? Talking about bringing passion and intensity to our marriage is just a joke. I won't even bring our kids into this conversation, as your actions speak volumes about how much you care for them. The joke's on me, but I'm done laughing. We're getting divorced as soon as possible. Pack your things to go back to him. You're not my wife anymore. I'm not your husband. I'll start looking for a new wife and mother for our children. But Will, we're married. I'm your wife, you're my husband, I love you. I don't want a divorce. Well, I do want a divorce. I've looked into it, and the courts here recognize when someone has abandoned their marriage. You left our marriage and our kids, so leave the house. Go back to Henry where you want to be. I don't want you here anymore. Victoria seemed surprised by my words, gathered her purse, and quietly left. What I hadn't told Victoria was that while she was with her new boyfriend, I had started looking for someone to have fun with. I found a woman named Charlotte. She had 2 kids, and her husband had left her for a younger woman. I went on a date with her, and my kids were thrilled when I got back. My daughter came down and asked about my date. Honey, it went really well. I had a great time. Charlotte is a very nice person. I like her a lot. Is she going to be our new mother? Wow, where did that come from? Kids these days seem to know more than I did at their age. That's not something you need to worry about, sweetie. Besides, this was only our first date. I'm not sure when there will be a second. Dad, is Mom ever coming back? That was a tough question. I spoke softly. I don't know, but I know one thing for sure, I'm not going anywhere. I'll always be here with you, your sister and brother. You can count on that. Thanks, Dad. She hugged me, and then we headed back to her room where I tucked her into bed. I went to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and sat at the counter to ponder. My wife had essentially left her family to be with her lover. Meanwhile, I had enjoyed a date with a lovely woman who could potentially become my new partner. Tonight had been the most enjoyable in the past year. The intimacy had been incredible, and I wanted it to continue. I desired a companion to share my life with once again. However, my mind cautioned me to take things slowly. On Monday, I reached out to my divorce lawyer to discuss moving forward with the process. Having the financial figures from before, I had a good idea of what divorcing Victoria would entail. It would require tapping into my retirement savings to cover her share of the house, and possibly entail providing a modest amount of alimony for a couple of years. But at this point, it seemed like a necessary expense. It was time to move forward. She showed no interest in returning, and it was evident that she no longer prioritized her children or me. I instructed my lawyer, go ahead and deliver the papers. I have her address, and since she mostly works from home, locating her shouldn't be too difficult. Proceed with it, and let's finalize this marriage. 3 days later, there was a knock at the door of the apartment where Victoria and Henry resided. The process server was adept at gaining access to apartment buildings, so when he knocked, she was the only one present. She opened the door. Victoria Kennedy, this is for you, he stated, handing her the envelope. You've been served. Victoria was taken aback by his words. She knew the contents of the envelope. She slowly shut the door and brought the envelope into the kitchen, placing it on the counter. She waited for over an hour before opening it, reflecting on the past year and her choices. Were they wise decisions? Did she truly consider the consequences when she expressed her desire to have an affair? Was Henry worth sacrificing her life and children for? Although the intimacy with him was unparalleled, was it sufficient? Was her husband Will truly so dull as a partner that she felt compelled to leave him and her children? Did she despise her former life enough to exchange it for Henry? These were challenging questions. With caution, she slid open the envelope and withdrew the papers. She handled them delicately, almost as if expecting them to erupt in her face. As she reviewed them, a divorce citing abandonment and infidelity, division of marital assets, and Will's full custody of the children. With visitation rights for her along with alimony of $1,000 million monthly for 2 years, she dropped them onto the counter, realizing finally, oh my God, what have I done? The lies and deceit she had spun for Will over the past 2 years were now haunting her. She could no longer deceive herself into believing she had triumphed, that she could act as she pleased without Will's objection, or that she could engage in relationships with other men without his input. Victoria immediately dialed Will's cell phone, but it went to voicemail. She left a brief message, asking him to call her regarding some important paperwork she had received. Then she tried calling her former home, but there was no answer. Realizing she needed to act to salvage her marriage, she grabbed her car keys and purse and headed out. Arriving home, she discovered her key no longer worked in any of the locks, and the garage code had been changed. In full damage control mode, Victoria drove to Will's office. His assistant, who knew about Victoria's affair, informed her that he was out for the day. Unable to reach him there, she returned to her old house, intending to wait for Will and the kids to return from school. The children arrived around 4 p.m. with their after-school sitter. They greeted Victoria with coldness, and her eldest refused to acknowledge her presence beyond a curt inquiry. "What are you doing here?" Victoria sat in the dining room while the kids had a snack and started on their homework. She observed changes in the decor since her last visit. New items on the walls, different curtains, and a few pieces of new furniture. Around 5:15, Will arrived home. Victoria quickly approached him as he entered through the back door. "Will, honey, I'm home. I'm glad you're here. We need to discuss some papers that were delivered to me today." "Great, Victoria. Did you sign them and bring them along?" "I signed them before my lawyer sent them to you. I believe what I'm proposing is fair and aligns with family and divorce laws in the state. The kids will remain with me. That's not up for negotiation. However, you can have visitation rights if you'd like, and if they're willing to see you." "Sweetheart, I'm planning to return home tonight. I've realized that I need you and the kids back in my life. I made a mistake thinking I needed someone else. You and the kids are all I need. I understand that now. I'm coming back, and I'll strive to be a good wife and mother." "Not so fast, Victoria. When you chose to leave us for Henry, that was your decision. I remember trying to convince you otherwise, but you were firm about your choice. Well, you made it, and now you have to face the consequences. So, no, you're not welcome back. Your home is with Henry now. You don't belong here anymore. It's been a year since you left." Victoria was softly crying now, and I handed her some tissues to wipe her tears. I waited a few minutes for her to regain her composure. "I think it's time for you to leave. Can I spend some time with the kids, please?" "Sure, I'll go get them." I went upstairs to fetch the kids and informed them that their mother was downstairs and wanted to see them. They were hesitant at first, but after some persuasion from me and reassurance that they didn't have to talk to her if they didn't want to, they slowly followed me down to the kitchen. It had been months since they had last seen their mother. Victoria smiled at them and said, "Hi, kids. I need a hug from you." They all stood still and didn't make a move towards their mother. The oldest, Emma, asked her, "Why did you leave us, Mom?" Victoria started crying again. "I'm coming home, kids. I've missed you all so much. I love you all so much." My daughter countered fast, "If you love us so much, why did you leave us and stay away so long?" Victoria had a shocked look on her face at that question. The answer she had was not one that she wanted to admit, that she wanted to have consequence-free sex with men other than her husband and not worry about her family and what it would do to them. She didn't give a crap about her family, only herself. Only now is she realizing what she was losing. I intervened. "Kids, why don't you head back upstairs? Your mom and I need to have a private conversation right now." With disapproving looks, the children left the kitchen, led by Emma. After a brief pause, I started, "So, do you still think leaving us for Henry was a good decision? Did you honestly think you could just leave and return like nothing changed?" I waited for her response, but all I heard was her sniffles and nose blowing. "I've moved forward, in case you missed that. I suppose you only realized it when you got those divorce papers today. You rushed over here once you saw your family had enough of your nonsense." Still met with silence and sniffles. "So, gather up whatever belongings you haven't taken yet. I've packed what I could find into boxes in the garage. It should be manageable for you. You can have Henry assist you. If there's anything else you want from here, just let me know." You can take whatever you want except me and the kids." After waiting another minute for Victoria's response, which didn't come, I spoke up. "I believe it's time for you to leave. There's nothing more to discuss. I'm not interested in having you back. The kids aren't eager for your return either. It's best you go back to Henry. If you want, have your lawyer review the divorce papers, and we can let them handle the finer points." I stood up and walked towards the front door, opening it and signaling for her to leave. "Goodbye, Victoria." She sat, looking defeated for a moment, then stood up, grabbed her bag, and walked out the front door. I shut the door behind her and exhaled a big breath. 3 months later, my lawyer arranged a final meeting for us to sign the divorce papers. We negotiated the terms of visits with the kids, agreeing that they shouldn't be compelled to see their mother if they didn't want to. Initially, their visits would be supervised by grandparents, with the possibility of unsupervised visits later if things went smoothly. Ultimately, it was up to the kids whether they wanted to see their mother. Surprisingly, they did have a couple of visits, but after meeting Henry, they felt uncomfortable and chose not to return. It seemed they had a good instinct for character judgment. Meanwhile, my relationship with Charlotte evolved as we spent more time together, meeting up 2 or 3 times a week. I proposed that we engage in activities beyond just physical intimacy, suggesting outings with our kids. Her daughters were similar in age to my youngest children, so I was eager for them to meet. Our first outing to the zoo, followed by pizza, went well. The kids got along splendidly. This marked the transition of my relationship with Charlotte from casual to more serious dating. 1 year later, quite some time has passed, and numerous changes have occurred in my life. I'm a year older and have gained wisdom from my experiences. I now live with Charlotte, or rather, the 7 of us share a home together. Handling 5 kids is undeniably challenging, despite what people may say. Thankfully, we all comfortably fit into my house, and by having 2 of the girls share a room, we manage just fine. We formed a close-knit family unit. Charlotte and I tied the knot shortly after blending our families. Our wedding was an intimate affair with close family and friends, officiated by a judge friend on a beach in the Dominican Republic. It was a memorable experience. We make sure to have a date night every week, where we focus on each other. Along with enjoying a fulfilling, intimate life, we also prioritize communication. We've both agreed that maintaining open communication is crucial, regardless of the topic. At dinner one night, the kids all told us that they wanted to try camping, so we got some camping equipment and gave it a try at a state park. It turned out great, and the kids had a blast. The campfire and roasting marshmallows were a big hit. Several times, when the marshmallows would catch fire, I would see a ball of fire aiming for my head and would duck to avoid getting hit with the gooey, flaming mess. 4 girls and 1 boy can giggle a lot when they have fun with flaming marshmallows. I decided to formally adopt Charlotte's 2 girls, ensuring that everyone in our household shares the same last name. It simplifies things for us. During our usual date night about a month ago, Charlotte surprised me once again. She's an amazing woman who brings me immense happiness every day. That particular evening, as we ate dinner, I noticed she opted for water instead of her usual glass of wine. While that alone wasn't significant, when she retrieved a small white plastic stick from her clutch purse, I instantly grasped the situation. She smiled as she handed it to me. "You might want to have a peek at this, dear. Wow, she's pregnant." My wife, with whom I've been married for less than a year, and with whom I already share 5 children, is expecting another baby. We've been quite busy preparing for the new addition to our family. The biggest surprise came when we learned that Charlotte was expecting twins. Now we're going to have 7 children altogether. Fortunately, I recently got promoted at work and now oversee the legal division of the company. With my increased salary and bonuses, we'll be able to manage the financial responsibilities of a larger family and even save up for their education. To provide our growing family with some summer getaways, we purchased a cottage by a lake about a 2-hour drive from our home. We've started renovating and expanding it to accommodate our active and growing brood. Looking back, I realize how fortunate I am. Despite a failed marriage, I found myself starting anew within just 2 years. What initially seemed like a tough period for me and my children when Victoria left us for someone else turned out well when I met a wonderful woman, Charlotte, who loves me and my kids. Each morning, amid the organized chaos of a large family, I feel grateful for the luck I had in meeting Charlotte and her daughters. And now, with 2 more children on the way, our family feels complete. Our children get along well, and we are a happy family. Plus, my wife is stunningly beautiful. As for Victoria, her life took its own course. Her relationship with Henry didn't last long after our divorce. It appeared that Henry had a habit of pursuing married women. And soon enough, he left Victoria for another woman he lured away from her husband. Victoria continued her job as a book editor and moved into a one-bedroom apartment where she could work comfortably. I heard she was dating, but beyond that, I wasn't aware of her life. Once, while Charlotte and I were out with the kids, I thought I spotted Victoria downtown. We walked as a group, with the older kids holding the hands of the younger ones. We didn't stop to chat with her. I sensed she watched us pass by, perhaps reflecting on how things could have been different, or maybe she felt relieved not to be responsible for children and a husband anymore. It's hard to say for sure.
Story 3.
Two attractive women were dining on the restaurant's terrace, catching the eyes of passing men, but they were engrossed in conversation and paid them no mind. "How long has it been?" Melanie inquired of her tall, dark-haired companion. "Feels like ages since I last saw you." The other woman, a blonde, a couple of years younger, replied, "I know, Mel. I've been swamped with grad school and family stuff. Hardly had time for anything else." "How's business school treating you? You must be close to snagging that MBA." "Yeah, almost there. Spring break's next week, then just a few more weeks till graduation. Thesis is turned in, so no worries there. Plus, looks like I'm skipping all exams." "Smooth sailing ahead then." "Fantastic, Mel. Thanks. Got a job lined up yet?" "Nah, thinking of taking a breather after the craziness of the last 2 years. Want to unwind a bit before diving into the workforce. But enough about me. How about you? Any special man in your life?" "Doing okay. Still on the hunt for Mr. Right." The blonde gave her brunette friend an assessing look. "With your looks, you could have a date every night if you wanted." Melanie smirked. "Trust me, living the single life isn't all it's cracked up to be nowadays. Wading through a sea of idiots just to find one decent guy gets old fast. I envy you, though. Happily married to a great guy like Adam. Speaking of whom, how's your dashing husband doing?" "He's all right, I suppose. Wait, did I just hear a hint of discontent? What's up, Mel? Things not all rosy in your world?" The blonde shook her head. "Not exactly trouble, just Adam's been swamped with work lately. Hardly any time for us, and when we do, our entertainment budget's tighter than ever. Well, he dedicates all his time to building his company for both of you, and grad school, well, it's probably not cheap." "I get it, and I'm grateful, but sometimes I just miss the carefree fun of school. Everyone talks about parties and bar meetups, and here I am, stuck at home watching TV reruns." Her dark-haired friend gave her a knowing look. Any specific person at school you're itching to party with?" Melanie chuckled. "You always see right through me." Leaning in to avoid being overheard, she confessed, "Actually, there's this freshman, Carl. He's really sweet." She blushed. "And he's definitely into me. Whenever we're together, he always compliments how good I look and how well I'm doing in school." Gary shook her head. "I don't think Adam would be thrilled about this." "It's just innocent flirting, nothing serious. But you're right. Adam wouldn't approve. That's why I won't tell him." She shifted uncomfortably. "But I can't help but miss the freedom of my single days. It was so exciting, meeting different guys. I miss it. Be careful, okay? You got a great husband. Don't risk losing him. Adam won't take kindly to any fooling around. And if he ever found out, plenty of women would be lining up to console him." I know. I want to spend my life with him, start a family. I just wanted a bit of fun before things got too serious." Lowering her voice, she leaned closer again. "Speaking of Carl, he asked me to go to Florida with him for spring break. If I could guarantee Adam wouldn't find out, I'd consider it." She laughed it off. "But it's just a fantasy. It could never happen." Jerry sat down, contemplating Melanie for a moment. Finally, she nodded, as if she had a plan. "Don't be so sure. I've got an idea how you could pull it off." Melanie sighed, a mix of disbelief and excitement. "Are you serious? You'd risk your marriage for a fling? If I could be certain Adam wouldn't know, maybe. But you're just teasing me, Gary. There's no way I could get away with it." "Yes, and it's actually pretty straightforward." Jerry began to outline each step with her fingers. "First, you make a new Gmail account under a fake name like Good Friend. Then, you use it to send Adam an anonymous message, warning him about his wife's supposed affair." "Wait, do I admit to having an affair? This sounds insane." "Why would you do that?" Jerry kept her tone even. "More like you'd suggest Melanie's cheating with someone Adam doesn't know and can't easily check. And what's the point? It'll just make Adam suspicious of me." "Exactly. But when he can't find the mystery guy, he'll have to confront you, demanding answers." "But I don't want him to doubt me." "No, you don't. So when he confronts you, you act furious, accusing him of mistrust. You'll be so upset that you'll want to break from the marriage. Doesn't your mom live in Florida?" Melanie was caught off guard by the sudden turn. "Yes. Why? Oh, I see." You tell Adam angrily that you're going to Florida to sort things out with your mom. Then while he's here, frantically searching for the phantom lover, you're in Florida with Carl, having your own little fling. How do I explain this to my mom? Jerry rolled her eyes. You don't. In fact, you don't even see her while you're there. But what if Adam calls her? Tell him not to. Make it clear you need space to sort things out. Warn him not to contact you or your mom while you're away. Tell him if he does, you might not come back. Melanie pondered her friend's plan for a moment, then her face lit up. You know, Gary, I can see this working. But what about when I come back? It's easy. By then, Adam will miss you like crazy. And since he can't find the mystery man, he'll realize it's all a hoax. He'll feel guilty and beg for forgiveness. You'll forgive him, and things will be back to normal. You'll have some fun, and you and Adam will be closer than ever. What about the supposed guy I'm supposed to be seeing? Maybe I should just make up a name for him. You could, but it'll be more believable if he's real. Pick someone totally off limits, like an old guy or someone far away or even deceased. That way, if Adam tries to find him, you're in the clear. Hey, I think I've got it. There was this creepy professor back in my first year of grad school. He must have vanished because I never saw him again. How does that sound? Perfect. Melanie reached across the table, squeezing her friend's hand. You're amazing, Jerry. I'm so pumped. I really think this is going to work. She hugged herself, trembling with anticipation. I can't wait to tell Carl. Adam returned to his office, sinking into his worn swivel chair. He rubbed his forehead, anxiety clouding his thoughts. If those parts don't arrive soon, we'll miss the prototype deadline. After the foreman left, Adam pondered a backup plan. His email chimed and he eagerly checked his inbox, hoping for good news. But the subject line regarding his wife nearly made him delete the message. Curiosity won and he opened it. I'm sorry to say, but Melanie's involved with Professor Bellingham. Thought you should know, friend. What in the world? Stunned, Adam read the message again, struggling to believe it. This can't be right. Melanie wouldn't do this. Someone's trying to stir up trouble. But who and why? He almost deleted it, but paused. I can't ignore this. It's probably a mistake, but I have to know. Angrily, he hit reply. Who are you? Why make such an accusation? What evidence do you have? He fired off the message, staring at the screen in frustration. This won't get me anywhere. No way to trace this person or when they'll reply. I need to find out about this Bellingham. He scoured the university's site, but found no mention of the professor. Frustrated, he widened his search to other schools nearby, but came up empty-handed. This is maddening, he muttered, feeling powerless. Did my buddy just invent a name? He Googled it, but the results included 2 females, none local. I knew it was fake. Someone's pulling a prank or trying to drive me nuts. Yet I couldn't bring myself to delete the letter. Now that it's sent, doubt gnawed at him. What if she's cheating? I didn't see any signs, but that doesn't mean much. I've been swamped at work, barely spending time with her. Maybe she's upset because I've been neglecting her. I remember turning down her fun ideas sometimes. But dang, I'm putting in nearly 70 hours a week for the business. Doesn't she get it? Can't she see it's for us? And we can't afford extravagance. Her tuition's skyrocketing and I'm pouring money into the business. Yet maybe I neglected her. Feeling guilty, he checked his calendar, finding no recent meetups. Damn. But guilt turned to anger. I may not have given Melanie all she wanted, but that doesn't justify cheating. We discussed sacrifices for the business. She agreed then, so she can't complain now. His thoughts were interrupted by the foreman's arrival. Hey, Adam, great news. The parts we needed just arrived. Thank goodness. All right, we need to unpack them and get them to the workshop ASAP. After the foreman left, Adam took a deep breath. Well, at least one crisis is avoided. He smirked. Guess I can devote more time to my wife. After more futile internet searching, he leaned back, contemplating. If Mel's really having an affair, it must be someone from the university. Maybe my buddy got the name wrong. Or perhaps the university didn't list him. He found the HR phone number. When the secretary answered, he inquired about Professor Bellingham. Which department? I think it's the business school, but not sure. After a pause, she apologized. No Bellingham in the business school, other departments? Another sigh. Please hold. This time the wait was longer. When she returned, her tone was curt. No Professor Bellingham here. A thought struck him. Maybe he left a year or 2 ago. I can only confirm current staff. Why? University policy, sir. Anything else? No, you tried, he said, holding back sarcasm. He tried the business school dean, but got nowhere. By now, his head throbbed. "Need a drink," he muttered, hanging up. Then he called Gary. "Hey, can we meet at Macy's after work? I need advice." "No, can't talk about it now." "Okay, see you at 6. At Macy's, Adam found Gary at a quiet table with wine and beer. He kissed him on the cheek. "Thanks for the beer and, more importantly, for coming." As they sat, Gary studied him. "All right, Adam, spill. Business trouble?" Unsure where to start, Adam hesitated. "Do you know a Professor Bellingham?" Gary shook her head. "Bellingham? Never heard of him." He sighed and handed her a printout of the email. "I got this today," he said. She swiftly perused it, sighed, then read it again. "Poor Adam," she said sympathetically. "No wonder you didn't want to discuss it over the phone. What are your thoughts?" "I'm torn, Jerry," he replied. "Can't fathom it's true, but can't ignore it either. I spent the day trying to find this elusive Bellingham at the university, but hit a dead end. Now I'm lost. Can't afford a detective, no time for sleuthing. That's why I turned to you. You've been a steadfast friend to Melanie and me. What's your take?" She took another sip of wine, then gave his hand a quick squeeze. "Essentially, you're asking if I think she's having an affair. I can't provide absolute certainty. On one hand, I haven't noticed anything to suggest she's unfaithful. On the other hand, I haven't seen much of her lately." His annoyance flashed, and she hastened to continue. "You're aware that some people thrive on stirring trouble, or perhaps you have business rivals who seek to distract. There may be other possibilities I haven't considered. What's clear is you can't ignore it and hope it vanishes. I know how strongly you value marital fidelity, and any suggestion of a rift in your marriage will gnaw at you. If left unaddressed, doubt will corrode your relationship with Melanie as effectively as infidelity," she said. "I understand your dilemma, Gary, but what's the solution? I believe you should show this to Melanie. She deserves to know she's been accused of infidelity and should have the chance to explain. After all, Adam, if someone accused you, wouldn't you want to know?" He sat silently, then nodded. "You're right. Keeping this from Melanie will affect our relationship. Ultimately, it could drive us apart as surely as if she had truly betrayed me," he said. He rose and embraced her. "Thanks for helping me sort through this, Gary. I don't know what I'd do without you. You both mean the world to me. Adam, if there's anything I can do, just say the word." He nodded gratefully and headed for the door as she watched him go. When he arrived home, Melanie was already there, waiting for him. "Where have you been, Adam? I tried to call you, but you didn't answer," she questioned. Ignoring her query, he grabbed her hand and guided her to the couch, sitting next to her. "I need to show you something, Mel. Something that's really confused me," he explained. As she sat down next to him, she appeared anxious while he handed her the printout. "I received this email today. Can you make sense of it?" She quickly read it, then, to his shock, she stood up and began shouting. "Do you think I'm cheating on you? I can't believe this. You hear one accusation from someone anonymous and suddenly I'm accused of cheating? No. No, darling, I'm not blaming you for anything." "If you're not blaming me, then why did you show me this nonsense?" She grabbed the printout, crumpled it, and threw it at him. "You might as well stab me in the heart. This deeply wounds me. You trust someone too scared to even sign their name over me, your wife," she declared, grabbing her bag and heading toward the door. "I can't even face you right now. I'm leaving, and I don't know when I'll return." With that, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. "Oh, damn, I didn't see this coming. Now things are even worse," he moaned, sinking back into the couch and burying his face in his hands. As he sat there, Adam's initial thoughts were defensive. Why was she so upset? She didn't even let me explain. I didn't accuse her of cheating. I just showed her what someone else claimed, that's all. But he realized the truth before he finished. If Mel had shown me that note, I probably would have lost it too. But what could I do? Pretend everything was okay? Jerry was right. I can't just dismiss the letter. It wouldn't be fair to Mel or to me. Even though he spent the rest of the night pondering the issue, he was no closer to deciding what to do than when he began. He knew he and Mel needed to talk, but he couldn't even decide what to say to her. All he knew for certain was that he wanted to bring his wife home to try to repair the relationship. Emotionally drained, Adam was determined to stay awake until Melanie returned. However, after another hour of waiting, exhaustion overtook him, and he drifted off to sleep on the sofa. Sometime past midnight, the sound of the door opening jolted him awake. As he stood up, Melanie entered the living room and fixed him with a stern look, hands on her hips. "Mel, we really need—" She cut him off sharply. "I don't want to talk about this now," she said, her tone final. You can spend the night on the couch and we'll discuss it in the morning. Without waiting for a response, she turned and marched down the hallway to their bedroom. Hearing the door slam shut, he groaned and settled back on the couch, hoping sleep would claim him again. It took a while. Adam usually rose early for work, but he felt compelled to wait until Melanie appeared so they could talk. Brewing coffee, he sat at his laptop, skimming the news. Nearly 8 o'clock, Melanie entered the kitchen, dragging a suitcase behind her, shocking Adam. "Where are you going, Melanie? I thought we were—" She raised her hand, cutting him off. "It's a shock, Adam. This shakes our whole marriage. I need time alone to process. Spring break starts tomorrow and I'm going to Florida to visit my mom. I'll be gone all week, returning next Monday for classes. During my absence, I don't want to hear from you. No calls to me or my mom. Got it?" He nodded, feeling helpless. "I'm serious, Adam. If you try to reach out, I might not come back. Understood?" Another nod. "Okay," she said, and left, dragging her suitcase to her car. Stunned, Adam sat for minutes before dragging himself to shave and change, then drove to work with a heavy heart. Upon arriving, good news awaited him. His foreman efficiently distributed the missing components, and testing proceeded without issue. "At least the business won't crash today," Adam muttered bitterly to himself. "Unlike my marriage." In the afternoon, while working on a spreadsheet, he received a call from Jerry. "I was worried and wanted to know how you were doing. How did it go last night with Melanie?" "Oh, well, it's a long, sad story," he said, feeling dejected. "Oh, that doesn't sound very good. Maybe we can get together to discuss this again over a drink." "That would be great. Jerry, same place." "Okay." Before leaving, he checked his email again, but there was still nothing from Gudfreen. At the bar, Jerry saw the dark circles under Adam's eyes right away. "Adam, looks like you didn't sleep much last night. What happened?" Taking a big sip from his beer, Adam talked about the fight with Melanie and her leaving. The next day, Jerry looked at him with sadness and guilt. "Oh, Adam, I feel awful. You listened to me and it turned out all wrong." "No, Jerry, I thought about it a lot, and I believe it was the only choice. I didn't expect Mel to react so strongly, but I couldn't hide the letter and act like nothing happened. Now I hope she'll calm down and we can talk when she's back." "You say that nicely, Adam, but I still feel bad. So what's your plan for the week?" "I'm not sure, Jerry. If Mel and I don't talk, I don't see how we can move forward. Maybe I'll wait a bit and then call her." "No, Adam, that's the last thing you should do. She already feels like you don't trust her. If you call after she told you not to, it'll prove her right." "Yeah, I get it. But I feel so useless. I don't know how to find out who sent the letter." "While she's away, I'll keep trying to find this Professor Bellingham." "That sounds smart. Maybe he can help fill in some gaps." Over the next days, Adam kept trying to solve the letter mystery. Despite no luck, he was sure Bellingham had ties to the university. Then he had an idea. "Maybe I can't find him because he's an alum, not a teacher. I'm an alum too, so maybe the alumni office can help." When Adam called and said he was a former student, he got transferred to the development department quickly. The person he talked to wrote down Adam's info and asked if he wanted to give money to the school. Adam said no. He was looking for Professor Bellingham, thinking he might be a former student. The person checked, but couldn't find anyone by that name in their records. Adam suggested maybe Bellingham didn't finish school, but the person couldn't help since their records only had graduates. Adam hung up frustrated, thinking he just guaranteed he'd be asked for money later. The next day, Adam went to the business school during spring break to look for Bellingham. Even though it was break, he asked around, but eventually got asked to leave by the assistant dean. Back at his office, feeling defeated, Adam wondered what to do next. Then his phone rang. It was Dr. Avery Mayfair from the business school faculty who heard him earlier and wanted to help. Mayfair said Bellingham used to teach part-time there, but his class got canceled because not many students enrolled. Adam thanked him. "There's more," Dr. Mayfair continued. "At the start of this year, Bellingham told me he got a job at Black Hills State University in South Dakota." "Really?" Adam asked, surprised. "Yes," the professor confirmed. "And there's something else. In the same message, he said he recently married his partner, Harold." "Harold? So Bellingham—" "Exactly," Dr. Mayfair said. "Thank you for calling, Dr. Mayfair," Adam said gratefully. "I still don't get why someone sent me that nasty letter, but now I know it was a lie." "Can I ask why you called me? I'm grateful, but we don't know each other," the professor asked. "I don't mind telling you," he continued, his tone changing. "Years ago, something similar happened to me. My wife left me for someone else. So I understand how you feel. Thankfully, this time it was just a false alarm, but if it were true, I'd have told you." Thanks, sir. I really appreciate what you did. That night, Adam called Gary to share the news. I still don't know who's trying to mess up my marriage, but I'm sure now Mel isn't with Professor Bellingham. Can you trust Dr. Mayfair? Gary asked. Definitely. I checked him out after our call. He's on the business school faculty. He seems respected and older, maybe around 60. I also looked up Bellingham on the Black Hills website. He's there too. That's good news, Adam. You must feel relieved. Yeah, I do. But now I'm not sure what to tell Mel when she comes back. It's simple, Adam. From what you said about your argument with her, she didn't give you a chance to explain. When she returns, tell her you never doubted her. Say you knew about Bellingham and found him as soon as you got the letter. But because she reacted strongly, you couldn't tell her. If you handle it right, she'll apologize to you. I'm not sure, Jerry. Things weren't exactly like that, Adam said uncertainly. Gary heard a smile in his voice. Come on, Adam. Is it really so bad to bend the truth a bit to get what you want? Before leaving town on Sunday, Melanie called Gary. Hey, I just wanted to check on Adam before I come home. I'm nervous about what I'll find. You owe me big for helping you while you were wrapped up in your affair. With some luck and my help, you'll reconcile with Adam, and your marriage will be better, Gary assured her. Melanie told him about her week, ending with Adam finding Bellingham. If you handle it right, Adam will apologize, you'll apologize, and everything will be normal again. There was silence. What if I don't want things to go back to normal? Gary was confused. What do you mean? Just last week you had an epiphany. Carl, the guy you're with, makes you laugh, and he's great in bed. You haven't felt this happy in years. You want to keep seeing him until the semester ends. Come on, Gary, you have to help me figure out a way to make this work. Hold on, Melanie. You're already taking a big risk by going off with this guy for a week. If you try to keep the affair going here in town, you're really pushing your luck, girl. Maybe, but you've got to admit your little scheme worked like a charm. I bet you can come up with a plan for me to do it again. Come on, Jerry, please. This guy is really something. I was afraid something like this might happen. There was a prolonged silence. Okay, Jerry said slowly. I can come up with a plan to get what you want. But you need to understand, you're putting your marriage to Adam at risk. He's a good guy, Melanie. He's dedicated, faithful, and a real family man. Men like him don't come around every day. Are you sure you want to gamble it all for a bit of excitement in the bedroom? Melanie chuckled. You get me going with, I can come up with a plan. Okay, but don't say I didn't warn you. Now, here's what you need to do. Do you still have that email account you set up? Of course. You told me to keep it active. Good, because you need to send another letter from your supposed good friend. But this time, send it to yourself, to your regular email. Okay, but what should the new letter say? It's the same as the last one, but this time you'll write that Adam is having an affair with me. What? But that's not true, and Adam knows it. How does this help? It's simple. The first letter accused you of infidelity. Adam found out you couldn't have cheated with Professor Bellingham, but he might still have doubts about your fidelity. Wait, Gary, didn't you say a letter about Bellingham would give me leeway with Carl? That's right. But after he gets the second letter, he won't have doubts. He already knows you weren't involved with Bellingham, and he's sure he's not having an affair with me. Clearly, the so-called good friend is a liar, so Adam won't doubt you anymore. This means you can get away with almost anything without raising Adam's suspicions. There was silence on the line. Melanie then exclaimed, Jerry, you're a genius. I don't know how you came up with this, but you just gave me a pass I can use for the rest of the semester. There are 2 more things you need to do, Melanie. First, make sure Adam tells me about the second letter. Okay, but why? Because then I can reinforce that you're trustworthy and this mystery friend isn't. Ah, got it. He respects your opinion, so he'll listen to your advice. What else? After you send the message to yourself, remember to log out of your good friend email account. What if Adam stumbles upon it? Oh no. Actually, you should probably sign out of both your email accounts when you're not using them. You don't want Adam to find love notes from Carl, right? I've warned Carl never to email me, but that's still smart advice. Better safe than sorry. Returning home from work that evening, Adam was alarmed to find Melanie in tears. What's wrong, Mel? What happened? He asked, rushing to her. Oh, Adam, it's happening again, she said, tears in her eyes, handing him a copy of the letter. Damn it, he swore after reading the accusatory message. You know that's not true, right? Of course. I know you'd never cheat on me, just as I'd never cheat on you. And even if you did, I know it wouldn't be with Gary. She's such a good friend to both of us that she'd never do anything like that. Damn it. Someone's still trying to stir up trouble for us, and I have no idea who or why. There must be a way to trace these things. She looked up at him hesitantly. Are you going to tell Jerry about this? Do you think I should? I believe you should. Whether you like it or not, she's now involved. It wouldn't be fair to her if you didn't inform her about this. The next morning, when Adam called, Gary answered cheerfully. Well, how are the lovebirds today? Adam's tone was serious. We're okay, Jerry, but there's something new I need to discuss with you. Can we meet after work? I actually plan to work from home after lunch. Can you come over? Sure, great. I'll stop by between 6:30 and 7. When Adam arrived at her apartment in the evening, Jerry immediately noticed his solemn expression. What's wrong, Adam? I've been worried since you called. He shook his head. I'm really sorry, Gary, but it seems you're now involved in this situation with Melanie and me. Confused, she looked at him. He handed her a copy of the latest letter. After reading it, she looked at Adam in despair. But this is absurd. We're not having an affair. I would never do that to Melanie. I hope she knows that. He nodded. She does. In fact, she said the same thing to me. Gary shook her head, puzzled. That's a relief to hear. But what do you think all this means? I think someone is determined to cause trouble between Melanie and me. First, a warning about the professor, now this. The only explanation I can think of is that I have an enemy, perhaps a business rival, but I have no idea who it could be. Anyway, since you're now involved, Mel and I decided you should be informed. I'm glad you did, Adam. You're always so considerate, but I'm not sure what we can do about it. Unless this mystery person does something obvious or slips up, involving the police might not help. I agree, Jerry, but it's frustrating. I'm tired of all this confusion, and I just want whoever it is to leave us alone. How is Melanie taking this? She's very upset. She was in tears when I got home. I'm not surprised, especially after the first ordeal. Look, Adam, I think Melanie is pretty fragile right now. With all of this and nearing graduation, she's probably on edge. You need to take care of her as much as possible. Do you think we should block all emails from this account? That might be a mistake. If they send anything else, you'll want to know. You're right. But how can I protect Mel? Well, if you receive another letter, I wouldn't tell her immediately, if at all. You could monitor her email on your laptop whenever possible. If another letter comes, you can forward it to yourself before she sees it. That way, you won't have to involve her. Yes, I think that's a good suggestion. He stood up. I'm truly sorry you got pulled into all of this. But if this is meant to be an apology, then I don't need one. You mean a lot to me. And I'll do whatever I can to assist. He smiled appreciatively. I should head home now to check on Melanie. Starting to leave, he paused, embraced Gary, and planted a kiss on her cheek. Thank you for being such a great friend. Your support throughout all of this means a great deal to me. Upon returning home, Adam was pleasantly surprised to find Melanie in much higher spirits. The following morning, she seemed even more cheerful and rose early to have breakfast with her husband. It's a rare treat to see you before I head off to work, Adam remarked. Well, I wanted to make sure I said I love you before you left this morning, she explained, planting a kiss on him. Oh, and by the way, she continued, I wanted to mention that I'll be attending a lecture on campus this evening. A few girlfriends and I are planning to grab a bite afterwards, so I might be home late. Sure thing, Mel. Everything's all right here. We've got plenty of leftovers in the fridge, so I can snack on those. Thanks, honey. If we miss each other, I'll probably swing by after class to drop off my things and change clothes. Have a great evening. Aware that Melanie wouldn't be home, Adam decided to stay at the office later than usual. Business was looking up, with a potential large client expressing interest in their new product samples. Things are starting to make sense now. I just need to get to the bottom of who's behind these email games with Mel and me, he pondered. He couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious good friend as he walked into the house. Heading towards the bedroom, he saw Melanie's laptop on the table. She probably didn't need it for the lecture, he thought. Then he remembered Gary's suggestion. I wonder if she still checks her email. If she does, then we need to see if she's received anything new from this idiot. He opened the laptop and saw that the email page wasn't open. Clicking on the Gmail link, a window popped up asking him to choose an account. He saw Melanie's email, but she was logged out, so he started to close Gmail. But before he could, he noticed a second account named Good Friend. Shocked, he stared at it. Trying to open it, Google asked for a password. Without it, he closed the tab and slumped into his chair, trying to understand what he found. Why does she have an email with that name? Gmail doesn't allow duplicate addresses, so Melanie must have sent those letters. But why? Why would she accuse herself of an affair? Then it hit him. It was a diversion. She wanted me to chase after some gay professor while she was with someone else. Another thought came. Her trip to Florida. When I confronted her, she acted mad, saying she needed space and was visiting her mother. But did she really? Quickly, he called his mother-in-law. After some small talk, he asked, "Melanie and I were thinking of visiting next month. Would that be too soon?" "Not at all. It's been ages since I saw you. Please come whenever," she said. Gritting his teeth, he replied, "Great, we'll be in touch." After hanging up, he cursed quietly. Melanie is so deceitful. Where did she go? And who was she with? Damn her. Then he recollected the last letter, the same one Melanie had received. What was the purpose of this, damn it? It must be another distraction while she goes to lectures with her friends. What a despicable, lying woman. Curiosity gnawed at him, prompting him to investigate what she wore when she went out. He hurried to the bedroom and sifted through his wife's underwear. Despite struggling to remember every detail about Melanie, he almost gave up. But a sudden suspicion gripped him, leading him to double-check one particular item, a garter belt. It was missing. Frustrated, he searched for a suitable bra and underwear, only to find them gone as well. Out for dinner with her friends, huh? He replaced everything and returned to the kitchen table. So be it. You enjoy sabotage and deception. Well, two can play at this game. When Melanie got home after midnight, he was angry, but pretended to sleep as she entered the bedroom. He held back from confronting her when he heard the shower, sarcastically thinking, who knew lectures would be so sweaty? The next morning, Adam got up very early and left for work before Melanie woke. He left a note by the coffee pot. Hope you enjoyed the lecture. I had an early meeting at work and might be late today, so don't wait up. Adam had a busy day, but not with work meetings. He did errands at lunch and came home with some purchases to get ready. Then he had 2 meetings in the afternoon. Later, he went out for dinner and a movie. Melanie was asleep when he got back to bed, trying not to disturb her. But when she woke up, Adam was waiting. I thought you left for work already, she said, taking the coffee he gave her. I wanted to see you before I leave. I have a flight to Detroit at noon. I'll be gone a few days. That's rare. When will you be back? Friday night, maybe Saturday morning if things go well. Can you manage while I'm gone? She smiled. I'll be fine. I'll keep busy. Good. Just stay away from our good friend while I'm gone. Her face fell. That's not funny, Adam. Sorry, you're right. It's not. He waved and left for the car. As he drove away, he frowned. She didn't even notice I didn't say I love you. She's probably making plans to meet her lover. I just need a diversion to keep her here instead of going to the airport. At lunchtime, Adam left his office and made his way to the off-campus parking lot of the university. He briskly walked toward the Graduate School of Business, dressed down in jeans and a sweatshirt, with a cheap backpack slung over his shoulder. Without attracting attention, he headed to the reading room of the business school library. The few students present paid him no mind as he casually strolled behind the periodicals rack. Once out of sight, he produced a string of hefty firecrackers, lit the extra-long fuse, and tossed them into a metal disposal container. He casually strolled to the nearest door, using his backpack to prop it open, then exited. Outside, he retrieved the phone he'd bought the previous day and dialed campus security. Quick, come over! There's firing at the business school, he exclaimed when they answered. I think there might be multiple shooters. It's ongoing. Pointing the phone towards the library, he triggered a series of fireworks seconds later. After disconnecting, he hurried across campus to his car amid blaring sirens and frantic people scattering in all directions. From his neighborhood vantage point, he watched an hour later as his wife's car pulled into their driveway, followed by another vehicle with a male figure stepping out. In times of danger, there's no place like home, Adam muttered with a bittersweet grin before driving to the motel where he'd booked a room. Later that night, he circled his neighborhood to ensure the second car remained parked in his driveway, then returned to his room to attempt sleep. The next morning, when the adulterous pair exited the house, they were shocked to find Adam leaning against the stranger's car door. God, Carl, that's my husband, Melanie gasped upon recognizing him. I thought you were in Detroit, she stammered, then caught herself. Dear, things aren't as they seem. Carl just stopped by for a visit. Melanie, every time you speak, it's just lies. I don't want to hear it anymore, he growled. This isn't a one-time slip-up. You've been seeing him for weeks and it wasn't accidental. You planned it all. I know you sent that letter as a distraction, so you could spend spring break together wherever you went. And by the way, your mom's wondering why you haven't visited. I guess you were too preoccupied with this garbage," he gestured at the sullen man, "to bother seeing her." Turning to Melanie's lover, he swiftly snapped several pictures with his phone. When the man realized, he snarled, clenched his fists, and took a threatening step forward. "Easy now," Adam warned, raising a hand, causing the man to back off. Adam turned to Melanie with a smirk. "Seems your boyfriend's more lover than fighter." His tone hardened. "Grab your things from the house and leave. Don't be here when I return, Mel. I meant it when I said I never want to see you again." "Adam, please," she pleaded, collapsing onto the driveway in tears. He paid her no mind and headed to his car, while she sat on the driveway, her hands covering her face as she wept. En route to his office, Adam made a stop at a dumpster, disposing of his phone and the toy weapon tucked in his pocket. "Glad these things look so real," he grinned coldly. Back at his desk, Adam emailed one of the photos he had taken. Surprisingly, he received a call shortly after. "This is Dr. Mayfair. Did you just send me a photo?" "Dr. Mayfair, forgive the intrusion again, but do you know the man in the photo? His name might be Carl. Is the woman beside him your wife?" "My ex-wife, to be precise. Lovely woman. I recall her being in one of my classes last year. As for the man, I recognize him. He's Carl Mannheim, one of my dissertation students." "Carl Mannheim. Good to know, doctor. I have some business to attend to with Mr. Mannheim." "So, he's the serpent in your Garden of Eden?" "In a manner of speaking. But my Eve wasn't exactly innocent." "Ah, I see. Quite intriguing. Well, I'm glad to have assisted you, though I'm sorry it's not the outcome you desired." "Thank you, doctor. I appreciate your time and help, regardless of the outcome." "Good luck to you, my boy, and keep your spirits up. Things have a way of working out, speaking from experience." 2 months later, Adam sat with his lawyer, feeling irked. "Any word from Melanie's lawyer? How's the divorce proceeding?" "Yes, I spoke with Hannah Montrose yesterday, and she sent a counteroffer to Melanie today. The good news is Melanie's agreed not to contest the divorce after hearing the recordings you made. Hannah persuaded her not to risk them in court. But the bad news is now that Melanie's accepted the marriage is over, she's keen on getting as much financial compensation as possible. Damn, she deceives me, gets caught, and then expects me to pay up. It's unfair. What's my cheating wife after? Typically, we'd see a request for dividing assets, but there's little to divide here. You rent, no pension, and minimal savings. Your only asset is your business share, which is running at a loss. Seems she's banking on it failing, so she's only asking for alimony." "I appreciate her vote of confidence," Adam snapped sarcastically. "So, how much alimony is she seeking?" "Considerably more than our offer." The lawyer handed him the document, and Adam gasped. "This is absurd. She knows I can't afford it. If I have to pay that much monthly, I'm essentially bankrupting my business to satisfy her. Melanie won't negotiate, so Hannah will suggest it to Judge Abernathy. I won't hand over that much without a fight. We'll take our chances in court." "Understood, Adam. But remember, Judge Abernathy holds all the power. You're at his mercy." About a month later, Adam sat anxiously in court. After arguments from both sides, Judge Abernathy adjourned. "Any thoughts on how it's going?" Adam whispered to his lawyer. "Hard to say. It could swing anyway, or the judge might suggest a compromise." They stood as Judge Abernathy returned, then sat again as he called the opposing counsels to the bench. "I assume your positions remain unchanged," the judge stated. The lawyers exchanged looks. "Yes, Your Honor." "Good. Before I decide, I'd like to question Miss Weatherby." Hannah Montrose looked tense but motioned for Melanie to approach. "Stay calm," she whispered. "And remember, address him as Your Honor." Adam's lawyer leaned in. Usually, it's not good when the judge wants to hear more from the other side. Adam watched sourly as his soon-to-be ex-wife testified, noting the judge's attention on her. "I think we're in trouble," he murmured to his lawyer. The judge reviewed papers, then turned to Melanie. "Miss Weatherby, it seems the primary dispute is the alimony amount. Your offer is substantially higher than Mr. Weatherby's, correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." "How do you justify your proposed amount?" "We're asking for more, considering my years of marriage and the need to start anew, Your Honor. However, Mr. Weatherby claims his sole income is from his struggling business. Why do you believe Mr. Weatherby can afford your proposed support?" "We argue he's artificially deflating his income by investing in his business. Adjustments could easily cover the support I seek." The judge remarked, examining the financial statement. It shows negative cash flow, Your Honor. Adam's accountants can manipulate numbers to yield any desired result. The judge raised his eyebrows. Are you suggesting the financial statements are fraudulent? Melanie turned pale and shook her head firmly. Noticing this, Melanie swiftly corrected herself. No, Your Honor, not at all. Earnings can be deferred and investments accelerated, all within accepted accounting principles. He simply invests heavily in his company. Adam's blood pressure spiked. He whispered angrily, What a manipulative move. She knows it's untrue. She's just trying to pressure me into giving her what she wants, regardless of the truth. Meanwhile, Judge Abernathy reviewed the case summary. Until now, we've focused on your husband's business investments, Mrs. Weatherby. However, Mr. Weatherby has also invested significantly in you, or at least in your education. If you're referring to my MBA, Your Honor, Adam did pay for my tuition, but I worked diligently, completed all coursework, exams, and wrote my dissertation. I've dedicated myself for the past 2 years, including summers. And you recently graduated? Yes, sir, with honors, she proudly confirmed. He nodded. Very well, Mrs. Weatherby. That's all. You may be seated. Returning to her lawyer, Melanie hugged her in relief as the judge adjusted his glasses and glanced at both parties. After reviewing all evidence, I'll grant Mrs. Weatherby the full financial support requested, the judge announced. Adam winced, and Melanie hugged her lawyer in joy, but the judge wasn't finished. This settlement provides for a comfortable living without employment for Mrs. Weatherby, despite her recent completion of a degree that should qualify her for a lucrative position. To incentivize the use of her education, I'm awarding alimony for 6 months. Only 6 months? That's unfair, Melanie protested. I can and I have, the judge replied, striking the gavel. Next case. Her lawyer swiftly escorted Melanie away, though she continued to protest until a bailiff intervened. Do I only have to pay alimony for 6 months? I can manage that, Adam remarked to his lawyer as they left the courtroom. Pretty good outcome, his lawyer agreed. I thought we were in trouble when the judge favored her, but he wasn't impressed with her tactics. Not many husbands fare so well in divorce court. Wonder what swayed him in your favor. You don't think her pleading no contest to the infidelity charge played a role? He shouldn't have considered it when deciding the financial settlement. Adam glanced back to see Melanie still arguing with her lawyer and chuckled. Well, whatever it is, I'm satisfied with the outcome. At that moment, a hand rested on his shoulder, and Adam turned to see an elderly man, vaguely familiar. I wanted to introduce myself, the gray-haired man explained. I'm Professor Mayfair. Adam firmly shook his hand. Professor, it's a pleasant surprise to meet you in person, sir. Thank you again for your assistance. What brought you to court today? The elderly man smiled. After our talk, I became curious about your case, so I decided to drop by and see how things turned out. His smile widened. It also gave me the chance to speak with an old friend of mine, Judge Abernathy. He shook Adam's hand again. I'm glad things worked out for you. If I can help in the future, I'd be glad to. He winked. Us divorced husbands need to stick together. As the professor left, Adam watched him go. Interesting, he muttered, then shook his head. Out of the corner of his eye, he thought he saw Gary in the crowd, but she vanished when he looked. It took a while before she dialed a familiar number on her phone, and when it was answered, she hesitantly said, Hello? Jerry, it's me, Melanie. Melanie, what a surprise. Haven't heard from you since you moved to Florida. How are you? To be honest, it's been tough. That's why I called. I needed someone to talk to. Sure. Tell me how you're doing. Are you working? That's part of the problem. Thought my MBA would land me a job, but employers here value experience more. Most offers I got were internships. Wow, that sounds tough. So where are you now? When alimony ended, I was desperate. Tried admin work, but it was terrible. Now I'm in financial advising. That's why I called. I can help analyze your finances if you're interested. Many overlook this. There was a brief pause. Oh, Melanie, I'd like to assist you, but my finances are stable right now, and I'm pretty confident about the future. I don't think I need help. I understand. No worries, Jerry. I hear that often, but I thought I'd give it a shot. It's tough to break into this industry. In fact, I had to move back in with my mom to cut costs. Are you living with her now? What about you and Carl? Don't mention him. We split shortly after moving here. You broke up? What happened? It was awful. Carl dropped out of school, his thesis got rejected, and he refused to work. He became bitter and aggressive, so I had to involve the police. That sounds rough, Melanie, but now you're free. You can go out, meet new people, and have fun. Remember how much you missed that when you were married? Melanie sighed. But outings require money. Gary and I aren't well off right now, and going out isn't as glamorous or exciting as I thought. Actually, there are more creeps than good guys. Changing the subject, Melanie asked, "How about you, Jerry? Anyone special?" My life's taken a turn. I'm getting married next month. Married? That's incredible. Who's the lucky guy? You know him. It's Adam. Melanie, Adam and I are engaged. My Adam? Are you engaged to my Adam? You can't do this. I already did. We'll have a small ceremony at our new home, then head to Paris for our honeymoon. New house, honeymoon in Paris. Can Adam afford all that? Not only has my situation changed, but Adam's has too. The same month you moved to Florida, he landed a big order he'd been working on. After that, his business took off. His new product is in high demand in the auto industry. And there's more. Earlier this year, a large manufacturer made him an offer to buy his business for a fortune. He agreed, and the deal's closing next week. So, you see, our financial future is secure. Melanie could barely speak, but Gary persisted, her tone now altered. You know, Melanie, all of this could have been yours if you were content with what you had. I warned you from the start about the risks of your affair, and I cautioned you that there would be other women ready to step in if your marriage crumbled. But you were the one who encouraged me. You even came up with the plan. Suddenly, Melanie's voice rose in shock. Oh my God, Jerry, it was you. You orchestrated everything from the beginning. I just shared an innocent fantasy with you, and you manipulated me into acting on it. You deceived me into thinking I could get away with an affair. Melanie, you're exaggerating. I didn't make you do anything against your will. I merely provided you with the opportunity. And no, I didn't tell Adam about your lover. I simply set things up so they'd unfold as I wanted. I trusted you, Gary. I thought you were my friend. Gary chuckled. You know what they say. All's fair in love and war. You won't get away with this. I'll make sure Adam knows what you did. You're a schemer. I'm sorry, Melanie, but I have plans with Adam tonight. I'll block your number after we hang up. You're despicable. Meanwhile, Jerry welcomed her fiancé home with a kiss. Adam mentioned receiving a letter from Melanie. Really? Jerry replied casually. I almost forgot about her. What'd she want? Adam glanced at Jerry neutrally. She claims you orchestrated everything to break us up. Pretty wild, huh? Jerry took a look at the letter and smirked. Poor Melanie. She could have made her little jealousy act more convincing if she signed it. Good friend. It took him a while to stop laughing.
Story 4.
Garrett Sullivan's boots echoed through the empty firehouse as he made his final rounds. The acrid scent of smoke still clung to his shirt from the day's earlier call. He rubbed his eyes, exhaustion settling into his bones after the grueling 24-hour shift. Hey, Sullivan, heading out? Brooks Alden's voice called from the kitchen. Garrett poked his head around the corner. His best friend and fellow firefighter was nursing a cup of coffee, his own shift just beginning. Yeah, finally. Thought that alarm would never sound for end of watch. Brooks chuckled. Got any plans with the missus tonight? A frown tugged at Garrett's lips. Nah, Elena's working late again. Probably won't even see her before I crash. Man, she's been putting a lot of hours lately, huh? Garrett shrugged, not wanting to voice the nagging concern that had been growing in the pit of his stomach. Yeah, well, you know how it is with these social media gigs. Round-the-clock stuff. Brooks nodded, but Garrett caught the flicker of doubt in his friend's eyes. He chose to ignore it. All right, I'm out. Stay safe out there, brother. Garrett clapped Brooks on the shoulder as he passed. You got it. Give Elena my best when you see her. The drive home was quiet, the streets of Phoenix still drowsy in the early morning light. Garrett's mind wandered to Elena. They'd been married for 5 years, but lately it felt like they were drifting apart. He couldn't remember the last time they'd had a real conversation that didn't revolve around work schedules or household chores. As he pulled into the driveway of their modest suburban home, Garrett made a decision. He'd surprise Elena with breakfast before she left for work. Maybe that would help bridge the growing gap between them. The house was dark and silent when he entered. Garrett moved quietly, not wanting to wake Elena if she was still asleep. He headed for the kitchen, already planning a spread of her favorite blueberry pancakes and crispy bacon. As he passed their bedroom, he noticed the door was ajar. Strange. Elena usually kept it closed when she slept. Garrett peered inside, expecting to see her curled up under the covers. The bed was empty, perfectly made, as if it hadn't been slept in at all. A cold knot formed in Garrett's stomach. He pulled out his phone, checking for any messages he might have missed. Nothing. "Elena," he called out, his voice echoing through the silent house. No response. Garrett's mind raced. Maybe she'd gone in early for work, but she would have texted him. It wasn't like her to just disappear without a word. He opened their shared location app, something they'd set up years ago for safety but rarely used anymore. His thumb hovered over Elena's icon for a moment before he tapped it. The map zoomed in, showing Elena's location across town. At a gym? At 6 a.m.? Garrett frowned, confusion and unease warring inside him. This made no sense. Elena hated early mornings, and she'd never shown any interest in working out beyond the occasional yoga class. He zoomed in further, reading the name of the establishment. Steel Cage Gym. An MMA gym? What the hell was Elena doing there? For a long moment, Garrett stood frozen in the hallway, staring at his phone. Part of him wanted to call her, demand an explanation. But a deeper, more primal instinct held him back. Something wasn't right here, and he needed to see for himself what was going on. Decision made, Garrett grabbed his keys and headed back out to his truck. The drive to Steel Cage Gym felt interminable, his mind conjuring up increasingly wild scenarios to explain Elena's presence there. He parked across the street, his trained eyes scanning the area. The gym was in a converted warehouse, its windows tinted to obscure the interior. A handful of cars dotted the small parking lot, including Elena's sleek black Audi. Garrett's jaw clenched. So she really was here. But why? And why lie about working late? He debated going inside, but hesitated. If there was an innocent explanation for all this, barging in would only make him look paranoid and controlling. Instead, he settled into wait, watching the entrance like a hawk. Nearly an hour passed before the gym's door swung open. Garrett's breath caught in his throat as he saw Elena emerge, laughing and flushed. But it wasn't her appearance that made his blood run cold. It was the man beside her. He was tall, muscular, with the build of a fighter. His arm was slung casually around Elena's shoulders, and she was leaning into him with a familiarity that sent a spike of pain through Garrett's chest. "Come on, Zane," Elena's voice carried across the quiet street. "You promised me breakfast after our session." The man Zane grinned down at her. All right, but only if you promise to show me that social media trick you were talking about. My followers have been stagnant lately." "Deal," Elena replied, her tone playful in a way Garrett hadn't heard in months. He watched, frozen, as they climbed into Zane's flashy sports car and drove away. The roar of the engine seemed to snap Garrett out of his shock trance. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. A storm of emotions raged inside him. Anger, betrayal, disbelief. But years of Marine training and the discipline of firefighting kept him outwardly calm. Garrett started his truck and headed home, his mind already formulating a plan. He wouldn't confront Elena yet. No, he needed more information first. And when he did confront her, it would be on his terms. The house felt different when he returned, tainted by the knowledge of Elena's deception. Garrett moved through the rooms like a ghost, seeing everything with new eyes. How long had this been going on? How many times had she lied to him, sneaking off to meet this Zane character? He showered mechanically, scrubbing away the lingering smoke smell from his shift. As the hot water pounded against his back, Garrett allowed himself a moment of vulnerability. A single, choked sob escaped him before he ruthlessly shoved the pain aside. He wouldn't break. Not now. Not ever. Dressed in fresh clothes, Garrett settled onto the couch to wait. He turned on the TV for background noise, but his eyes kept darting to the clock. Hours ticked by. Still no sign of Elena. It was well past noon when he finally heard the key in the lock. Garrett's entire body tensed, but he forced himself to remain seated, outwardly calm. Elena breezed in, her cheeks still flushed from her workout. She startled slightly when she saw Garrett on the couch. "Oh, you're home early," she said, a flicker of something guilt? Fear? Crossing her face before she smiled. "How was your shift?" Garrett studied her, noting the way she wouldn't quite meet his eyes. "Long," he replied, his voice carefully neutral. "How was work?" Elena's smile faltered for just a moment. Oh, the usual. Lots of client meetings, endless emails. She moved towards the kitchen, clearly eager to end the conversation. I'm going to grab a shower. Had to squeeze in a quick workout this morning to clear my head. Garrett watched her retreat, while rising in his throat at the casual way she lied to his face. He waited until he heard the shower running before moving to the bedroom. Elena's gym bag sat by the door, and the scent of unfamiliar cologne clung to her discarded clothes. He picked up her phone from the nightstand, easily bypassing the lock screen. They'd always known each other's passwords, a sign of trust, or so he'd thought. Now, that trust lay shattered at his feet. Garrett's fingers moved swiftly, pulling up her text messages and recent calls. His suspicions were confirmed as he saw dozens of exchanges with a contact labeled Simply Z. The texts were flirtatious, filled with inside jokes and thinly veiled innuendos. He wanted to hurl the phone against the wall, to storm into the bathroom and confront Elena with the evidence of her betrayal. But the cold, calculating part of his brain, the part that had kept him alive in war zones and burning buildings, held him back. He needed to be smart about this. Garrett returned the phone to its exact position and left the room just as the shower turned off. He resumed his seat on the couch, outwardly calm even as his insides churned with hurt and rage. Elena emerged a few minutes later, wrapped in a fluffy robe. "Hey," she said, her voice overly bright. "I was thinking we could order in tonight. Maybe that new Thai place." Garrett really looked at her. How had he missed the signs? The subtle changes in her behavior, the growing distance between them. He'd been so caught up in work, in the day-to-day grind of their lives, that he'd failed to see what was right in front of him. "Actually," he said, his voice steady, "we need to talk." Elena's smile slipped, a flicker of nervousness crossing her face. "Oh, what about?" Garrett leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. "I think you know, Elena. Why don't you tell me about Zane?" The color drained from Elena's face. For a moment, she looked like she might try to deny it, but something in Garrett's expression must have told her it was pointless. How? How did you find out?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Does it matter?" Garrett's tone was cold, controlled. "What matters is that you've been lying to me." "For how long, Elena? How long have you been sneaking around behind my back?" Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Garrett, I can explain. It's not what you think." "Really?" Garrett's laugh was bitter. "Because what I think is that my wife has been cheating on me with some MMA fighter." "Am I wrong?" Elena flinched at his words. "It had just happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far. You have to believe me, Garrett. I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did," Garrett said, rising to his feet. "You lied to me, betrayed me, made a fool of me." His voice rose with each accusation, years of pent-up emotion finally breaking through his careful control. Elena took a step back, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "God, Garrett, I'm so sorry. Please, can we just talk about this? Maybe we can work it out." Garrett stared at her, disbelief etched on his features. "Work it out? Are you serious right now, Elena? You throw away 5 years of marriage for some guy you met at a gym, and you think we can just work it out?" "It's not like that," Elena protested. "You don't understand. Things between us, they've been so boring lately. Zane, he makes me feel alive, excited." The words hit Garrett like a physical blow. "Boring," he repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "I'm sorry if my dedication to saving lives and providing for our future is too boring for you, Elena." Elena's eyes widened as she realized her mistake. "That's not what I meant." "Garrett, please, just listen to me." But Garrett was done listening. The hurt was rapidly giving way to cold, hard anger. "No, I think I've heard enough. You want excitement? Fine. Here's some excitement for you. I want a divorce." "What? No." Elena's voice rose in panic. "Garrett, you can't mean that. We can fix this. I'll end things with Zane, I swear. Just please, give me another chance." Garrett shook his head, unmoved by her pleas. "There are no more chances, Elena. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it." He moved past her, heading for the bedroom. Elena trailed after him, still begging and pleading, but Garrett tuned her out. He grabbed a duffel bag from the closet, and began shoving clothes into it. "What are you doing?" Elena asked, her voice small and frightened. "Leaving," Garrett replied shortly. "I'll be staying with Rachel for a few days. I suggest you use that time to figure out where you're going to live because I want you out of this house by the end of the week." Elena's sobs intensified. "Garrett, please, don't do this. I love you." Garrett paused in his packing, turning to face her one last time. "No, Elena, you don't. If you loved me, we wouldn't be here right now." With that, he zipped up the bag and brushed past her. Elena's cries followed him down the hallway, but Garrett didn't look back. He got in his truck and drove away, leaving behind the shattered remains of his marriage. As he navigated the familiar streets to his sister's house, Garrett's mind was already moving forward. He'd need a lawyer, someone tough, someone who could handle what was sure to be a messy divorce. He'd heard good things about Mallory Greer, a local attorney known for her no-nonsense approach to high-conflict cases. Garrett pulled out his phone at a red light, quickly finding Mallory's number. He'd call first thing in the morning, get the ball rolling. Elena had made her bed, and now she'd have to lie in it. But Garrett? Garrett was just getting started. The light turned green, and Garrett accelerated, leaving behind the life he'd known. He was hurt, angry, betrayed. But he wasn't broken. No, Garrett Sullivan was many things, but broken wasn't one of them. And he'd be damned if he let Elena or anyone else change that. Garrett's fist slammed into the punching bag, the impact reverberating through his entire body. Sweat dripped down his face as he unleashed a flurry of punches, each one fueled by the anger and betrayal that had been his constant companions for the past few weeks. "Whoa there, killer," a gruff voice called out. "You trying to murder that bag?" Garrett paused, his chest heaving as he turned to face coach Troy Riggins. The owner of Phoenix Elite MMA stood with his arms crossed, a knowing look in his eyes. "Just working out some frustration," Garrett muttered, reaching for his water bottle. Troy nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Yeah, I can see that. But, there are better ways to channel that energy." Garrett raised an eyebrow. "Oh yeah? Like what?" A slow grin spread across Troy's face. "How about a real fight?" Garrett blinked, caught off guard by the suggestion. "What are you talking about?" Troy leaned in, his voice low and intense. "I heard through the grapevine that Zane Vickers' upcoming opponent just pulled out due to injury. They're looking for a replacement." The name sent a jolt through Garrett's system. Zane Vickers, the man who had destroyed his marriage, who was still flaunting his relationship with Elena all over town. "You want me to fight him?" Garrett asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Troy shrugged. "Why not? You've got the skills, the discipline from your Marine days. And let's face it, you've got more motivation than any other fighter I've ever seen." Garrett's mind raced. The idea of facing Zane in the ring, of making him pay for what he'd done, it was intoxicating. "But I've never fought professionally," Garrett argued, even as a part of him was already imagining the fight. Troy waved off his concern. "Details. Look, I've been watching you train. You've got something special, kid. Raw talent, sure, but more than that. You've got heart. And sometimes that's all you need." Garrett stared at the punching bag, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. "When's the fight?" he asked finally. 3 months from now," Troy replied. "It won't be easy. You'll have to train harder than you ever have before. But if you're willing to put in the work, I think you could give Vickers a run for his money." Garrett turned back to Troy, his eyes blazing with determination. "Sign me up." The next few weeks were a blur of intense training sessions, grueling workouts, and countless hours in the gym. Garrett threw himself into preparation with a single-minded focus that impressed even the seasoned fighters at Phoenix Elite. One evening, as Garrett was wrapping up a particularly brutal sparring session, his phone buzzed with a message. It was from his sister, Rachel. "Hey, you alive in there?" Rachel's voice was teasing as Garrett answered the call. "Barely," he grunted, sinking onto a nearby bench. "What's up, Ratch?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Have you checked your email today?" Garrett frowned. "No, why?" Rachel sighed. "It's Elena. She's trying to contest the divorce settlement. Her lawyer sent over some new demands." A wave of anger washed over Garrett. "You've got to be kidding me. What more could she possibly want? From what I can tell, she's going after your pension and trying to claim a larger share of your joint assets. Rachel explained. Garrett, I think you need to talk to your lawyer. Garrett pinched the bridge of his nose, frustration building. Yeah, I'll call Mallory first thing in the morning. Thanks for the heads up, sis. After ending the call, Garrett sat in the empty gym, his mind churning. Just when he thought he was moving on, Elena found a way to drag him back into their messy past. The next morning, Garrett sat across from Mallory Greer in her sleek downtown office. The no-nonsense attorney listened intently as he explained the latest development. So, what do you think? Garrett asked, leaning back in his chair. Does she have a case? Mallory's lips curved into a predatory smile. Not a chance in hell. Elena's grasping at straws, trying to milk this divorce for all it's worth. But don't worry, we've got this under control. Garrett nodded, relieved. Good. I just want this over with. I need to focus on my training. Mallory's eyebrow quirked up. Training? For what? I've got a fight coming up, Garrett explained. MMA bout against Zane Vickers. Understanding dawned in Mallory's eyes. Ah, the other man. Well, that's interesting. Just be careful, Garrett. We don't want anything jeopardizing our position in the divorce proceedings. Garrett's jaw clenched. Trust me, the only thing getting jeopardized in that ring will be Vickers' face. As Garrett left Mallory's office, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. His blood ran cold as he read the message. We need to talk. Please. Elena, Garrett's thumb hovered over the delete button, but something made him hesitate. Against his better judgment, he typed out a reply, fine. Coffee shop on 5th. 30 minutes. The coffee shop was busy when Garrett arrived, the buzz of conversation and the rich scent of espresso filling the air. He spotted Elena immediately, sitting at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug. As he approached, Garrett was struck by how different she looked. Gone was the polished, confident woman he'd married. In her place sat someone who seemed smaller somehow, diminished. Garrett, Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. Thank you for coming. He slid into the seat across from her, his face an impassive mask. You wanted to talk. So talk. Elena flinched at his cold tone. I wanted to apologize. For everything. The affair, the lies, this whole mess with the divorce. She trailed off, her eyes filling with tears. Garrett remained unmoved. Is that all? Because if you're looking for forgiveness, you're wasting your time. No, that's not. Elena took a deep breath, visibly steeling herself. I heard about the fight. With Zane. Garrett's eyes narrowed. How? It doesn't matter, Elena said quickly. Garrett, please. Don't do this. Zane, he's dangerous. I don't want you to get hurt. A harsh laugh escaped Garrett's lips. That's rich, coming from you. Funny how you didn't care about hurting me when you were sneaking around behind my back. Elena's face crumpled. I know. God, Garrett, I know how badly I messed up. But please listen to me. Zane isn't who you think he is. He's not who I thought he was either. What's that supposed to mean? Garrett asked, curiosity getting the better of him. Elena glanced around nervously before leaning in. He's volatile. Unpredictable. I've seen him lose control. Garrett, it's scary. For a moment, Garrett felt a flicker of concern. Not for himself, but for Elena. Despite everything, a part of him still cared about her safety. Are you okay? He asked, his voice gruff. Has he hurt you? Elena shook her head quickly. No, nothing like that. It's just, I made a mistake, Garrett. A huge, unforgivable mistake. And I'm paying for it now. Garrett sat back, studying her. Part of him wanted to reach out, to comfort her. But the larger part, the part still raw and bleeding from her betrayal, held him back. I'm sorry you're going through that, he said finally, his tone neutral. But it doesn't change anything between us. And it definitely doesn't change my plans for the fight. Elena's shoulders slumped in defeat. I understand. Just be careful, okay? Garrett stood, ready to leave this conversation and Elena behind. I always am. As he walked away, Garrett couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was more to Elena's warning than she was letting on. But he pushed the thought aside. He had a fight to prepare for, and nothing was going to distract him from his goal. The weeks flew by in a whirlwind of training and legal maneuvering. Garrett's days were filled with grueling workouts and sparring sessions, while his evenings were often spent poring over documents with Mallory, strategizing their approach to the divorce proceedings. One afternoon, as Garrett was leaving the gym, he ran into a familiar face. "Garrett? Holy shit, man, is that you?" Garrett turned to see Brooks Alden, his former best friend and colleague, staring at him in disbelief. "Brooks," Garrett acknowledged coolly. "What are you doing here?" Brooks shifted uncomfortably. I've been training here for a few weeks now. Trying to get back in shape, you know?" Garrett's eyes narrowed. Something about Brooks' demeanor felt off. "Right. Well, good for you." He turned to leave, but Brooks' next words stopped him in his tracks. "Wait, Garrett. I need to tell you something." Garrett slowly faced Brooks again, his expression wary. "What is it?" Brooks took a deep breath, his face a mask of guilt. "It's about Elena and the divorce." A cold knot formed in Garrett's stomach. "What about it?" I've been talking to her," Brooks admitted, his words tumbling out in a rush. "Advising her on the divorce proceedings. Helping her figure out how to get more money out of you." For a moment, Garrett couldn't breathe. The betrayal hit him like a physical blow, worse even than Elena's infidelity. Because this was from someone he had trusted with his life. "You what?" Garrett's voice was deadly quiet. Brooks held up his hands, as if to ward off Garrett's anger. I know it was wrong. But Elena, she came to me for help. Said she was scared, that she didn't know what she was going to do after the divorce." "And you believed her?" Garrett spat. "After everything she did? I've had feelings for her for years," Brooks confessed, unable to meet Garrett's eyes. "I thought maybe if I helped her." He never got to finish that sentence. Garrett's fist connected with Brooks' jaw, sending him stumbling backward. "You son of a bitch," Garrett growled, advancing on his former friend. "I trusted you. We were brothers, for Christ's sake." Brooks rubbed his jaw, his eyes wide with fear. "Garrett, please. I'm sorry. I never meant save it." Garrett cut him off. "We're done. You hear me? Done. If I ever see you again, it'll be too soon." With that, Garrett stormed out of the gym, his whole body shaking with rage. He'd thought he was past being hurt by Elena's betrayal. But this cut deep. As he drove home, Garrett's mind raced. How much had Brooks told Elena? How much of an advantage did she now have in the divorce proceedings? He pulled out his phone, dialing Mallory's number. "Garrett." Mallory answered on the second ring. "What's wrong?" "We've got a problem," Garrett said grimly. "A big one." After explaining the situation to Mallory, Garrett found himself back at Phoenix Elite, his fists pounding into the heavy bag with renewed fury. "Whoa, easy there, champ," Troy's voice cut through Garrett's haze of anger. "You keep that up, you're going to break something. Preferably not my equipment." Garrett stepped back from the bag, his chest heaving. "Sorry, coach. Just had some news I needed to work through." Troy's eyes narrowed. "Yeah, I can see that. Want to talk about it?" For a moment, Garrett considered brushing off the offer. But something in Troy's steady gaze made him reconsider. "My ex," Garrett began, his voice rough. "She's been getting inside information about the divorce. From my former best friend." Troy let out a low whistle. "Damn, that's cold." "Yeah," Garrett agreed, slumping against the wall. "I don't know what to do, Troy. Every time I think I'm moving forward, something drags me back." Troy was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. "You know, when I was fighting professionally, I had a bout against this guy. Real piece of work. Talked trash about my family, tried to get in my head before the fight." Garrett looked up, curious despite himself. "What happened?" A slow grin spread across Troy's face. "I channeled every bit of anger, every ounce of frustration into my training. And when we finally got in that ring, I destroyed him, knocked him out cold in the second round. The point is," Troy continued, his voice serious now, "you can let this crap drag you down, or you can use it. Turn it into fuel. Make it your strength." Garrett nodded slowly, feeling something shift inside him. Yeah, I think I could do that." Troy clapped him on the shoulder. "Good. Now let's get back to work. We got a fight to win." As Garrett threw himself back into his training with renewed vigor, he felt a sense of clarity he hadn't experienced in months. Elena, Brooks, the divorce, none of it mattered. The only thing that mattered was the fight ahead. And Garrett was going to win, no matter what. The arena buzzed with anticipation, the air thick with the scent of sweat and adrenaline. Garrett paced in the locker room, his muscles coiled tight, ready for action. Coach Troy's voice cut through the pre-fight tension. "All right, kid. This is it. You ready?" Garrett met Troy's gaze, his eyes burning with determination. "I've been ready for this my whole life." Troy nodded, a hint of pride in his expression. "Remember what we talked about. Use that anger, but don't let it control you. Stay focused. Stay smart." "Got it, coach," Garrett replied, rolling his shoulders to loosen them up. A knock on the door signaled it was time. As Garrett made his way to the cage, the roar of the crowd washed over him. He scanned the sea of faces, his heart skipping a beat when he spotted Elena in the front row. Their eyes met for a brief moment before Garrett forced himself to look away. He couldn't afford any distractions now. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's main event." Garrett tuned out the introductions, his focus narrowing to the man across the cage. Zane Vickers stood there, bouncing on the balls of his feet, a cocky smirk plastered on his face. As the referee called them to the center, Zane leaned in close. "Hope you're ready to get your ass kicked, rookie," he taunted. Garrett didn't respond, his face an impassive mask. He'd let his fists do the talking. The bell rang, and the fight was on. Zane came out aggressive, throwing a flurry of punches that Garrett barely managed to dodge. One clipped his jaw, sending a jolt of pain through his head. "Come on, firefighter," Zane sneered. "Is that all you've got?" Garrett gritted his teeth, remembering Troy's words. "Use the anger, don't let it control you." He waited for his opening, and when Zane overextended on a right hook, Garrett struck. His counterpunch landed flush on Zane's cheek, staggering the cocky fighter. The crowd erupted as Garrett pressed his advantage, backing Zane up against the cage. But Zane was a seasoned fighter, and he quickly recovered, slipping out of Garrett's grasp and landing a solid knee to the midsection. The first round ended with both fighters breathing heavily, neither having gained a clear advantage. As Garrett sat in his corner, Troy's voice cut through the ringing in his ears. "You're doing great, kid. He's fast, but you're stronger. Wear him down, then go for the finish." Garrett nodded, his eyes never leaving Zane across the cage. He could do this. He had to do this. The second round started much like the first, with Zane trying to use his speed to overwhelm Garrett. But this time, Garrett was ready. He weathered the storm, blocking or dodging most of Zane's strikes while looking for openings to land his own heavy shots. Midway through the round, Garrett saw his chance. Zane threw a wild haymaker, leaving himself exposed. Garrett ducked under the punch and drove forward, slamming Zane to the mat with a powerful takedown. The crowd went wild as Garrett rained down punches from the top position. Zane covered up, desperately trying to protect himself. "That's it," Troy shouted from the corner. "Don't let up." But just as it seemed the fight might be over, the bell rang, signaling the end of the round. Zane was saved by the bell, but the momentum had clearly shifted. As Garrett sat in his corner, he could hear the murmur of the crowd. They were on his side now, sensing an upset in the making. Across the cage, Zane looked rattled for the first time. "One more round," Troy said, his voice intense. "You've got him on the ropes. Now finish it." The final round began, and Garrett could see the desperation in Zane's eyes. The cocky fighter was gone, replaced by a man fighting for survival. Zane came out swinging wildly, trying to land a fight-ending blow. But Garrett stayed calm, using his defense to frustrate Zane even further. "What's wrong, champ?" Garrett taunted, echoing Zane's earlier words. "Is that all you've got?" With a roar of anger, Zane lunged forward, throwing caution to the wind. It was exactly what Garrett had been waiting for. He sidestepped Zane's rush, then unleashed a devastating right hook that connected flush with Zane's jaw. The sound of the impact echoed through the arena, followed by a moment of stunned silence as Zane crumpled to the mat. The referee rushed in, waving off the fight as the crowd erupted in cheers. Garrett stood over his fallen opponent, a mix of emotions surging through him. Relief, triumph, and a sense of closure he hadn't expected. As the reality of his victory sank in, Garrett was swarmed by his team. Troy wrapped him in a bear hug, shouting congratulations in his ear. But over Troy's shoulder, Garrett's eyes found Elena in the crowd. She stood there, her expression unreadable, before turning and disappearing into the sea of people. The post-fight whirlwind was a blur of interviews, medical checks, and congratulations. By the time Garrett finally made it back to the locker room, exhaustion was setting in, but so was a sense of accomplishment he hadn't felt in a long time. As he gathered his things, there was a soft knock at the door. Garrett turned to see Elena standing there, looking small and uncertain. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the lingering noise from the arena. Garrett considered for a moment, then nodded. "Make it quick. I've got a celebration to get to." Elena stepped into the room, wringing her hands nervously. I wanted to congratulate you." "That was incredible, Garrett." "Thanks," he replied, his tone neutral. "Is that all?" Elena took a deep breath, as if steeling herself. "No, it's not. I wanted to apologize. Again. For everything. Watching you out there tonight, seeing how far you've come, it made me realize how badly I messed up." Garrett studied her, searching for any sign of manipulation or deceit. But all he saw was genuine remorse. "I appreciate that," he said finally. "But it doesn't change anything between us." Elena nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I know. I hope someday you can forgive me." Garrett's jaw clenched. "Forgiveness isn't something you're owed, Elena. It's earned. And right now, I don't see any reason to give it." A tear slipped down Elena's cheek. "I understand. I'll drop the contest to the divorce settlement. You deserve better than what I've put you through." With that, she turned to leave, but Garrett's voice stopped her. "Elena," he called. She looked back, hope flickering in her eyes. "Take care of yourself? Okay." A sad smile crossed her face. "You too, Garrett. You deserve all the success in the world." As Elena walked away, Garrett felt a weight lift from his shoulders. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a step towards closure. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of media appearances and congratulatory messages. Garrett's victory had catapulted him into the spotlight, with fight promoters already clamoring for his next bout. But amidst the chaos, Garrett received a call that brought him back to reality. "Garrett? It's Mallory. We need to talk." An hour later, Garrett sat across from his lawyer, confusion etched on his face. "I don't understand. What do you mean it's all over?" Mallory leaned back in her chair, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. "I mean, Mr. Sullivan, that we've won. Completely and utterly." She slid a stack of papers across the desk. "Elena's withdrawn all her claims. She's agreed to the original settlement terms, which, as you'll recall, heavily favored you. But that's not all." Garrett leafed through the documents, his eyes widening as he took in the details. "This can't be right. The house, the savings. She's giving up everything." Mallory nodded, her smile growing. "It seems your ex-wife had a change of heart. But here's where it gets interesting. Remember those inside tips your former friend Brooks was feeding her?" Garrett's jaw clenched at the mention of Brooks' name. "Yeah, what about them?" "Well," Mallory continued, "it turns out Brooks wasn't as clever as he thought. Some of the advice he gave Elena was not just unethical, but downright illegal. When I presented the evidence to Elena's lawyer, they folded like a cheap suit." Garrett sat back, stunned. "So it's over? Just like that?" Mallory nodded. "Just like that. You're a free man, Garrett, and a wealthy one at that." As the reality of the situation sank in, Garrett felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief, certainly, a sense of justice served, but also a twinge of sadness for the life he'd lost. "What about Brooks?" he asked. "And Elena?" Mallory's expression turned serious. "Brooks is facing an ethics investigation. He'll likely lose his job, maybe even his license. As for Elena, well, let's just say her new boyfriend isn't too happy about recent developments." Garrett raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Mallory smirked. "Turns out Mr. Vickers has been hit with a lawsuit from the MMA organization. Something about reckless behavior damaging the sport's reputation. He's facing some serious financial troubles." Garrett shook his head, a mirthless chuckle escaping his lips. "Karma's a bitch, I guess." As he left Mallory's office, Garrett felt like he was stepping into a new chapter of his life. The anger and bitterness that had driven him for so long were fading, replaced by a sense of possibility. His phone buzzed with a text from Troy. "Hey champ, got some interesting offers for your next fight. Come by the gym when you can." Garrett smiled, realizing that the victory over Zane wasn't just the end of something, but the beginning of a whole new journey. A week later, Garrett stood in front of his old house, a sold sign stuck in the front yard. As he took one last look at the place that had once been his home, he heard footsteps approaching. Saying goodbye, Garrett turned to see his sister, Rachel, walking up the driveway. "Yeah," he replied, giving her a small smile. "Feels weird, you know? Like I'm closing a book I never finished reading." Rachel nodded, understanding in her eyes. Sometimes that's the best thing you can do. Close the book and start a new one. Garrett wrapped an arm around his sister's shoulders. "When did you get so wise, little sis?" Rachel laughed, elbowing him playfully. "I've always been the smart one in the family. You were just too busy being a meathead to notice." As they turned to leave, Garrett cast one last glance at the house. "You know," he said, his voice thoughtful, "for a while there, I thought Elena had broken me, that I'd never be the same." Rachel looked up at him. "And now?" A slow smile spread across Garrett's face. "Now I realize she didn't break me. She just showed me how strong I really am." Rachel squeezed his hand. "That's my brother. Unbreakable." As they walked away, Garrett felt a sense of peace settle over him. The past few months had been a crucible, testing him in ways he never imagined. But he'd emerged stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next. He thought about Troy's offer, about the possibility of a real career in MMA. He thought about the friends who had stood by him, and the ones who had revealed their true colors. He thought about Elena, and found that the anger that had once consumed him had faded to a dull ache. Garrett Sullivan wasn't the same man he'd been when this all started. But that was okay, because the man he'd become was someone he could be proud of. Someone who faced his challenges head-on, who didn't break under pressure, but bent and adapted. As he climbed into his truck, ready to head to the gym and discuss his future with Troy, Garrett felt a sense of excitement he hadn't experienced in years. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, he was looking forward to the journey. The engine roared to life, and Garrett pulled away from his old life, driving towards a future full of possibility. He wasn't broken. He wasn't defeated. He was unbreakable, and his story was far from over.